We're an investment and advisory firm focused on the play-to-earn ecosystem in emerging economies. But today I'm here to talk to you about interoperability, connecting the chains. The current ecosystem we have is made up of a whole range of layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains. And each one of them is really fighting to gain traction in the market. And I see that directly in play-to-earn gaming, but also, in DeFi, we're seeing new projects and new protocols pop up constantly. This competition leads to a great deal of innovation, but also can cause a lot of headaches from developers looking to pick the right chain so that they can access liquidity and a user base, to users having to have a whole host of wallets. That's the solution to that is interoperability, which is the ability to exchange and utilize information and assets between two systems. Sounds easy, right? As it turns out, it's not. It can be quite a pain. Our panelists who we've got today are all working on projects to really make that easier for everyone in the ecosystem. So if I'll invite our panelists on stage. Thanks, guys. We'll start with some quick introductions. So if you could introduce yourself, your company. Really keen to hear how your project plays a role in that interoperability that we just talked about. So, Karel, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Karel, Composable CTO. My background is in systems engineering. I'm a Rust maximalist, contributor to Substrate, Near, and some other projects. At Composable, we're really trying to build the future of cross-chain infrastructure with longevity in mind. Right now, we see a lot of ad hoc solutions in the bridging ecosystems that do work really well and do provide like the products that people are looking for, but we're not yet seeing a system that properly abstracts over all ecosystems and that provides both the security guarantees as well as the UX that we're really looking for. I'm thinking that the next bull market, next cycle, we're actually going to see this become a reality and also start seeing people stop us being associated with a specific ecosystem. And instead, all of a sudden, apps being abstracted over multiple ones, where you no longer know where the backing chain really is.
My name is Dakota Barnett. I'm the NFT throwing up a rainbow behind me. Nice to meet you all. I'm the founder of Invarch. Invarch is, I say it's kind of a new kind of blockchain focused around intellectual property, funding, but more importantly, cross-chain authentication of assets. So like we're kind of all familiar with an NFT and this immutable record of ownership, that CID. But what we are realizing is the actual ability to have plagiarism resistant, if not proof, assets as well. They're pegged to those CIDs. So really exciting there. Our big role in interoperability, though, is really kind of tapping into and hacking around a lot of the infrastructure and systems that are in place or that are being built by other teams in order to realize this vision and kind of showcase a extremely powerful byproduct of interoperability to make the future of Web3 something that's a lot more powerful and significant than it is today by introducing a new class of assets that hopefully will allow us to unlock a new world of possibilities for everyone.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to the organizers. My name is Liam. I help out with business development at Evmos, helping to build the Evmos ecosystem. Now, you might be asking, what is Evmos? In its simplest form, we are bringing EVM or Ethereum compatibility to the Cosmos ecosystem. Now, really what we're trying to do is go much further beyond that. It feels like there's a new EVM environment popping up every week or so, and they're all really focused on one thing and one thing only, which is scalability. And scalability is certainly something that's important and certainly something that we do want to spend time on. But we also wanted to introduce this idea of interoperability and how can we enable not just multi-chain applications, but also cross-chain applications so that you can write all of your contracts in Solidity to deploy them to Evmos, but then still be able to interact with any other EVM or Cosmos environment. Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Sergey from Axelar. So what we're doing is building and delivering infrastructure to really create this interoperable cross-chain Web3, right? So We're building infrastructure, we're building networks, we're building, routing, translation protocols, kind of transport layers, and yeah, so happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Now, obviously, you guys are all very close to the issue of interoperability, but for the audience who might be less aware, it sounds great. Why wouldn't we just have interoperability today? But what are some of the barriers that we're facing? Is it purely technical? Are they human? What are some of the barriers that we're working through? Carl, what's up with you?
So I think we're facing barriers both on the UX side as well as on the technical side. There are some unanswered questions in the multi-chain thesis around the security of light client-based bridges. What happens when you have a 51% attack, chain reorganization? We haven't really seen those in practice yet that often. But still, those do offer a threat to all bridges out there. That's why I'm really bullish on Tendermint, Beefy, Babe, basically chains that provide deterministic finality, because they basically solve that problem. Routing for ETH 2.0, because that's what we really need to do proper bridging within the Ethereum ecosystem. The next problem is UX, where in the previous cycle, we saw that it was basically impossible to leave an ecosystem. Now we're seeing that you can definitely bridge out your own funds and start playing around in different ecosystems. But if I may use Web2 analogies, instead of Slack making a lot of API requests for you and integrating new products, basically currently your products ask you to do those API calls yourself, then go back to your main product, register that you've done so, and you're doing all of these steps by yourself. Well, what I'd really like to see is the capability for smart contracts to dial into other chains, do DeFi interactions there, while giving the user the one interface, right? They're doing xyz.farm, and they don't necessarily realize that it's actually backed by 20 different chains, all trustlessly. And part of that is possible right now, part of that isn't yet, and I think that's kind of where the ecosystem should move to. Perhaps a couple more years, and then we're there.
So I agree. It's definitely a back end and front end issue. On the back end, see, one thing that is a huge issue, and it always comes down to security, because there's a lot of other things that you can kind of hack around, but security is what you cannot hack around. People have tried to institute bridges in, I would say, ignorance of this, and it's only cost people like hundreds of millions of dollars, so no big deal. There needs to be a level of seriousness that's taken with this, and a lot of respect for the individuals up here, because they take that very seriously when architecting these designs to do them correctly. But yeah, security is definitely a huge thing. ETH2 is needed because the ecosystem there, the developer ecosystem, is absolutely massive, and that's not going to go away. You'll see other ecosystems grow, and you'll see the developer base grow, but Ethereum, whether you see ETH2 as a golden savior or you see it as your grandfather, it's there and it's staying. And so are the other developers. However, with that, because now there's all these applications and dApps that are all built on top of it, and they can do amazing things, but they're not connected securely, soundly with other ecosystems. Then it's this siloed chain, and it's almost kind of redundant against the greater Web3 vision. At least against interoperability, 100% goes against that greater mission. But coming back to like the front end side, like he was saying, be able to have these transactions to be able to bridge assets in one clean, like flush motion is extremely important, because I have myself, like I've gotten regular individuals who they've known nothing about even Bitcoin, but I want to get them into DeFi because they're the yields, inflation's bad. Let's, try and get them to get into this mix. But when I do so, and I'm showing them how to move assets around different chains and how to bridge assets, they hate it. They're, why would I do this? And I'm trying to tell them it's because you make money, but they're already disinterested, and it's because of the UX that they experience, and because of that UI that they experience. So that needs to be bridged, but first and foremost, you need to have systems in the back end that allow for these smooth transactions. So I know, for example, with Composable, with their Beefy Centauri, working on that. I want to, I guess, kind of shout out Polkadex, project in the Polkadot ecosystem. They have their Thea Bridge, which allows individuals to experience that in one transaction, to bridge and swap in one transaction, which I think is important. But ultimately, yeah, just security of the systems, the way that we design these things is really crucial. And I also think having a good sense of community between the builders is also extremely important to make sure that there is this this unified mission in achieving true secure interoperability, one where you can't sacrifice security.
That's actually an interesting point to throw to you, Liam, with the communities and how they work together. I mean, you guys are working pretty hard to get Cosmos and ETH just humming and interoperating. How do you go from a community perspective to bring them together and get people on both sides cooperating?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because we're trying to cater to both the Cosmos community as well as the Ethereum community, kind of as a port of entry of sorts between these communities. We are not a bridge, right? We leverage bridges like Axelar or Composable to bridge those assets over, but then to interact with the greater Cosmos ecosystem or the greater EVM ecosystem, you can leverage Evmos. But it's hard because like even just something as simple as wallets. If you're an Ethereum user, you're very familiar with using MetaMask. But then if you're a Cosmos user, you're very familiar with using Kepler. And so, you know, when we launched, unfortunately, we launched with support originally only just for MetaMask and with, you know, Kepler wallet to come soon after. But then the Cosmos community was really mad and frustrated because they weren't able to use the wallet user experience that they were familiar with. And just the build out that was required to support Kepler wallet meant that we had to actually change the key type that is supported in Kepler, since we use Ethereum keys, for instance, or other concepts like explorers, right? We take explorers for granted, being able to just look up your transaction. But it's something that is really complicated for Evmos because we have both Cosmos and Ethereum transactions. And so none of the Cosmos explorers are able to support both. None of the Ethereum explorers are able to support both. And so right now we have two different explorers depending on which type of transaction you're trying to look up. Right. And so we're investing a lot of time and money, quite frankly, just to build out this infrastructure, to go to the wallet teams and build out these pieces of functionality just because they're not able to support it themselves. And it's hard. And I don't think it's something that I think we underestimated in the early era days. And it's something that we are spending, I'd say, most of our resources on trying to make sure that both communities are able to use the tools and services that they are used to from those respective communities.
Thanks for that. And Sergey, what are you seeing in terms of some of the current barriers to interoperability?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just to step back, I mean, I think it's good that we're talking about interoperability, but it almost came as a necessity, right? I think, you know, if you look at evolution of other, you know, networks, including like the internet and traditional systems, it's always like infrastructure is laid down first, and then you have applications that come 5-10 years later. I think kind of to step back, I think interoperability came in as a necessity over the last like year in particular, where all these ecosystems being built, right? We've seen interesting activity, we're seeing interesting traction, and then people are like, oh, we need interoperability. Let's hook up something, you know, ad hoc, centralized, you know, put some crappy technology in the middle, lose 300 million here, 600 million there, right? It's like, you know, what's the big deal? But so that's the problem, right? Where infrastructure is just catching up. But I think the exciting part are all the use cases. And so I do think the challenge over the next, you know, still year to come or year to two is like laying down the foundational infrastructure that can really stand there for decades, right? Not for years, not for months. Be robust, you know, be secure. As you know, everyone said, I think security is critical in these pieces of infrastructure. But even what we're doing now, it's, you know, it's very, very early, right? And once you have that, you know, user experiences and everything else, you know, something we're going to have to work very hard on, including things like making, you know, wallets cross-chain enabled, right? You know, having a users flip between the wallets and flipping their transactions and, you know, trying to figure out what's the difference between the wallet types, address types, like that's not going to get you to, you know, 1 billion users on the retail side. So those experiences have to be abstracted, but, you know, we still have a little bit of work on the kind of ground infrastructure layer until that can really click.
Awesome. I think we can all agree that we'd like to stop seeing $300 million exploits. But kind of touching on, you know, you've nearly all mentioned security as one of the big issues. There's a little bit of, I guess, competition on the panel, but you guys are all, seem like you all know each other and collaborate. For the general public's knowledge, like what is the industry doing to harmonize and standardize around some of these things, or is it each project trying to come up with the perfect secure solution? What are you guys seeing from an industry?
First of all, I don't necessarily think that we are competitors, because I think within the cross-chain thesis, either cross-chain wins and we get a lot of very successful chains bridged together, or we lose to ZK rollups and we have one layer that's super scalable. If you've got bridges, it's not good for you to be bridged to chains that aren't doing well. So I'd love for everyone here to do really well. Standardization-wise, I think that within Cosmos, we're seeing a lot of great work there. IBC is like probably the nicest standard for the low-level bridging. What worries me a lot is that a lot of work has been done so far on bridging already with ad hoc solutions that basically combine a lot of different layers into one solution. So you don't necessarily have the one secure bridge capable of transporting data across chains and then a monetary transfer protocol with disputing built on top of that. No, bridges are very monolithic applications where if their lower level security is cracked, funds get lost. You're not necessarily able to securely message pass on top of them. So for me, at least, the Tendermint guys did and the IBC guys did is taking a step back, realizing what is the separation of concerns and building out on top of that. And now I feel like overall projects are doing the same. They're taking that step back again. They've seen the initial traction, and now we're going back to remodel bridges, remodel infrastructure.
So I still kind of step on the same note is I like to think it's not competition. Me specifically, well, Invarch specifically, not a competition, more so very closely watching the development of these teams, because with their success comes our success. So just bring it back to cross-chain authentication, that real quick. So, because what we're achieving there is tapping into these bridges, and we're not necessarily always, which is good, we're not necessarily looking to always move the actual tokens or actual value. Sometimes we're just looking to send messages to transfer information in itself, because there's a lot of powerful applications, use cases that get realized as a result. So it's extremely important for, I would say, everyone to, well, let me bring it back actually. So like I was saying, the communication of everything, that is very key. That is huge. It's good to work together, but it's also good to make sure that individuals, again, like I said earlier, are working together with some common purpose, and you can't sacrifice security because of those exploits. But yet with the success of other projects comes the success of greater possibilities. I would say that even with if there was ZK1, you lose. That's a shame if that happens, because you lose out on so many possibilities, because now we are contributing to, scalable or not, this one siloed environment, when the reality is that there will always be other environments. I think that's come to be a truth, is that there will always be other ecosystems, whether or not as a community we agree with it. It doesn't matter. They're going to exist, and applications are going to be built, and you can't stop that. But what you can do is build for a future where you expect that, and build for a future where you're building to connect these things securely and soundly, so that the application layer, you can build exciting apps that kind of look at all these different protocols like little Lego pieces. And you're able to take components, I'm able to utilize different aspects that it's only possible here, and this is possible over here. But if I can combine these different mechanisms together at the application layer, if I could tap into them all, well, then you create extraordinarily powerful applications. This will be extremely easy in the Polkadot ecosystem, but again, that's one ecosystem. There's Cosmos. It's going nowhere. Polkadot's going nowhere. Cosmos is going nowhere. Ethereum's going nowhere. So it's definitely important to make sure that we're building towards this future with all of them in mind.
Just to tie back into what you said about going to monolithic rollups, we lose the distributed and decentralized nature. We have blockchain against censorship, against large state organizations trying to control finance. Rollups, scalable, but we do give up that sense of security. And I think multi-chain is actually the continuation of being censorship resistant.
I think even composability, right? In rollups and ZKs becomes harder across them, right? So, interoperability there is still going to be needed, just on a different layer potentially. But I think, yeah, to what, everyone is saying, I think we're still so early in the ecosystem that, we're seeing, these chains, we're probably going to see a lot more. We're going to see a lot more ecosystems. And I do think, standardization and the kind of layering of different mechanics that are behind the scenes happening behind the interoperability solutions or is needed, right? We actually recently wrote a blog where we try to kind of decouple 4 layers that are needed to kind of think about interoperability, everything from a base layer to kind of transport layer, authentication layer, and then message semantics, right? I do think that, as people that are working in the field, we should quickly try to agree at least on things like message semantics, because that means the applications can continue being built with different, technologies underneath it and be able to kind of a swap and plug and play, right? As more solutions are available or better, technologies is rolled out. So I do think kind of the message semantics layer is going to standardize over the next kind of year. That would enable the applications to continue building with various, approaches back in them underneath.
And sorry, just to jump in, is anyone actually working on that message standardization, and how collectively are they bringing everyone in the ecosystem into contributing?
So I know there are some groups that are starting to do this. We actually kicking off, an effort to standardize some cross-chain protocols for kind of EVM compatibility. So, I'll actually be, inviting people to join some of these community calls. We're putting a short standard sometime this or next week, and then, we want to invite all the community members to kind of give feedback and, help us, along those lines. So yeah, I think it's early, right? Like I think we're just to the point where you can do things like sending messages right across chains. A year ago, like nobody really talked about that. So I think this will be kind of the theme probably over the next year.
One danger you have, or not necessarily danger, is with a lot of people developing standards right now. So it's going to be another competing standard. Probably going to see a boom of standards first, and then the cut down again to see which one actually works out the best and survives. And then shamefully, sometimes it's not the best one that survives, but simply the one that got the most traction early on. So I'm rooting for us to actually get the best one out there ASAP and develop this nicely.
And I think this actually ties in nicely to just the kind of debate of like EVM versus like Rust environments, because the EVM environment has become a standard of sorts. Rust is, forever increasing, and a lot more ecosystems are adopting it, but there's still a big steep learning curve. Just one, learning the development of building in Rust environments like CosmWasm or Substrate, or just building the tools to support it. One thing that's really nice about, bringing the EVM compatibility with Evmos is just we get to tap into all the Oracle providers, that applications are used to, like Chainlink right off the bat, or indexers like the Graph and Covalent, or multi-sigs like Gnosis Safe, right? Like people complain about the multi-sigs in the Cosmos ecosystem all the time, just because like you pretty much entirely have to use the CLI command line for it. There's no good UIs for it. Just the functionality of it is really poor. But we're able to introduce that. We're able to introduce Gnosis Safe with Evmos. And I think by bringing those tools and those familiarity to an ecosystem really just helps kickstart it. And we've seen that with like the Avalanche ecosystem in their C chain. Almost all of their activity is on C chain. With Polkadot and their Moonbeam or Aurora and Near, the EVM compatibility, might not necessarily be the best technology solution, but it has kind of risen so far as a standard of sorts.
I would, however, be really sad if in 10 years' time, the future of finance is built on top of a language that got ripped from JavaScript, the EVM that got built fairly short amount of time.
So I think it's, I just want to add, it's kind of to agree with that. EVM is now, but according to the man who created Solidity, it's not the future.
Time will tell.
So we can't quite all agree on everything just yet. We've got a little bit of ways to go.
It's a lot easier. Don't get me wrong. It's so much easier right now. If someone wanted to get into blockchain and they're like, look, I've made like maybe some simple backend apps, or I've made a website or something, like I want to get into this space. Yeah, okay, granted, Rust, a bit more of a learning curve, and the documentation is not as friendly right now, but still early with things. So I mean, Solidity day one probably wasn't the greatest, but you give it time, you give it resources and community support, and things build up. So I do think that, I know for a fact we're going to be seeing more and more of that with Rust, with Substrate, with CosmWasm. Should have called that Wasmos. But my bad. Always. But you'll see this greater adoption and these tools. And to one point, there will be, I think, the standardization, but in the same way that you're able to, different languages are specific for, or some languages are better at different things compared to others. And sometimes those things are really niche, but nonetheless, they exist. And you see some languages take superiority. So like, I don't think Solidity will ever go away. No. But I do think that Rust has the clear potential to provide a more secure foundation for future applications and blockchains.
And maybe just one quick addition also is that, we are not by any means like Solidity maxis. And because like with this cross-chain future, we really believe that you should be able to build your EVM application on Evmos, but have it interact with COS and WASM contracts, right? And so this is something that we're spending these resources on so that you can have that optionality and flexibility if you want to continue to use that EVM environment.
Now, I will just jump in. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Things have come a long way in the last kind of year or so. Quite a lot of the chains have really started to get some traction. We're seeing good inroads to interoperability. But we'll go through, with the last couple of minutes remaining, what do you see as the goal for interoperability in our space in 12 months? What does it actually look like? Sergio, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, over the next 12 months, I do think we're going to continue building this core kind of connectivity infrastructure, right? Maybe some of the kind of user experiences of interacting across these chains will be easier, but I think, it's still going to be early. The end goal, kind of 3-5 years from now is that, at least from a user perspective, you don't have to think about all these issues, right? Because the Solidity is addressed. I find myself more and more often when I visit an application, like asking like what chains is actually deployed on, which is a good question to ask, but most users don't care. That's the reality, right? Like most users want to trust the developer that they actually build on the best environment for where their application needs to be hosted, that it is a secure environment and it can compose and they can interact with it from arbitrary wallets or arbitrary ecosystems, right? So, I don't think we'll quite get there over the next, year, but that's the goal that I think, a lot of us are working towards, which, I'm super excited about.
Yeah, definitely want to echo that from Sergey. With Cosmos, there's a lot of effort on what are called interchain accounts, making it possible to control your value even if it's on other Cosmos chains. And the goal should be that you don't care what chain it's on, right? That's a developer decision. Just like, developers are the ones that decide whether they're using AWS or Google Cloud. It's not users that are deciding that. And so there needs to be, and this comes down to kind of the standardization talk about earlier, about we all need to, get on the same page of like, hey, where do we want to move forward so that we can move forward, even if it's not necessarily a perfect solution.
I also want to dive in. It's like, I'd like to think that sometimes, I'm usually wrong with these things. I like to think it could take a year or two, and then 3 to 5 would be a lot safer to say. But there's also like 2 ways of looking at this, or 2 ways of approaching it. I think that you can't sacrifice security when it comes to establishing the foundation for interoperability. But outside of that, you are able to hack around a lot of other things. Like you have this guy to my right knows a good bit about it, but like there's a lot of research into, I guess, consensus agnostic smart contracts, which is very important. Chainlink, specifically speaking with them, I should have said that or not, working with that and stuff. But it's important to understand that there's different ways to go about this, but I would like to say like a year or 2 from now, there's a pretty well-established foundation in place. And then I would like to see maybe the years after, it's just on improving it and making it even more robust, or maybe we're realizing new use cases and applications. So we're trying to develop new, more efficient channels of communication for those instances. But yeah, I like to think 2 years from now, I like to imagine a highly connected ecosystem, almost like I kind of imagine like Washington, D.C. It's one place. It's extremely diverse. There's all these different cultures and buildings and people and identities, but they're in an environment where they're able to cooperate together. So the same thing, there's all these different ecosystems, there's all these different environments, but 2 years from now, seeing developers being able to build and tap into these things like Legos, but then also like with Invarch, I didn't want to talk about it too much about it, but cross-chain authentication, realizing this system underneath, hacking into interoperability in order to create like I said, piracy proof or plagiarism impossible assets to where, if you do rip the JPEG 24 seconds later, it's no good across Web3. You know what I mean? Or you steal this music or you rip that video and 24 seconds later, it's no good. You can't use it in this application. You know what I mean? Seeing these new unrealized use cases, I think, is what will be the most exciting of all.
Yeah, then just to conclude, I think we have the right direction. We need bridges to do secure message passing. We're going to get to this future where we have those guarantees. I think the next step from that on is dispute mechanism systems to figure out systematic risks within cross-chain DeFi. What happens to your chain if you're accepting Luna as a governance token, right? And how do you quickly shut down bridges, pools, when all of a sudden 6 trillion more get minted at a very low floor price? So far, this is all very ad hoc. And I think the best monitoring systems right now basically use Twitter and wait for someone to say, hey, this doesn't look right at the moment, which compared to TradFi is absolutely unacceptable, to be honest. And once within your own chain, you do have a sense of control. You do have an understanding of the risk associated with it. When you create a new pool in your DEX, all right, like I'm bringing in these 2 tokens, you can read the contracts. But once you go cross-chain, this becomes a lot more difficult because not only is it enough to read the contracts on that other chain, what happens if they change their VM? And all of a sudden they do contract upgrades, or they're not even using smart contracts, but they're app chains, and they can arbitrarily change the semantics of their token whenever they want. I think for that, like, we're kind of going to see new projects arise. So if you're in the space and think you might have a nice solution for this, contact me, because I'm super interested in this. It's going a bit more into getting DeFi at least regulated, controlled, and properly monitored.
All right, thank you so much for your time today, gents. It's so good to hear that you guys are actually all creating these conversations and interacting together. I think it's very hopeful for the future of interoperability. So, Grell, Dakota, Liam, today, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, and great accent.
Yeah, thank you.
I really enjoy that point that he made, that when you're looking to add interoperability to these ecosystems, there's the idealization that bringing things together are ultimately going to bring, better solutions, right? It's ultimately going to build up what it is that is being envisioned, right? But I really enjoyed the point that he made, that when you start adding different chains, there could be some dimension of, wait, is what they're saying and is what they're doing going to be compatible? What if they change something? Will adding a dimension, will adding what they're doing to my chain make something happen? I think that's a really good point, and I think that's really interesting to think about, because sometimes, if you're like me, you can get a little lost in the, let's look towards the good, but maybe we should really root in what it is that we're looking to create. And I just think that's very interesting, and I really like that point. But on to our next panel. So we talked about DeFi a little bit yesterday, and on my stage we had, is DeFi dead, right? We had DeFi Summer 2022, and it boomed and it bust. And actually, Decentral was born out of an idea coming from DeFi Summer. DeFi Summit was the original online activity that was happening that said, hey, we really like educating people on DeFi. Let's hold an IRL conference. So there is a shift happening, but what does that shift look like? Well, let me introduce our panel moderator to explain just that. Please help me in introducing to the stage Mr. Rupert Barksfield.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Bianca. Morning, everybody. Everybody got a little bit of a sore head? Did you manage to get out last night? Raise your hands. There we go. A few people over there. Thank you for joining so early in the morning. I appreciate it. I know in the dark auditorium, in this wonderful chat that we're going to have, you can have a little sleep. Don't worry. Guys, we're talking about DeFi 2.0 today and the shift that we're seeing in the industry beyond DeFi Summer last year. And I'm joined by some amazing people. I want to allow them to come out onto stage and introduce themselves very shortly. Before I do that, though, I wanted to say thank you again coming down. And I'm Rupert Barksfield. If you've not heard of me before, check out amulet.org. We're a new DeFi insurance protocol. And that's kind of apt for DeFi 2.0 and what we're talking about. So rather than me drone on, I'm going to bring out everybody else and allow them to introduce themselves as they come. So Ankit, can you join me out here? Michael and Don, please come up to the stage. All right. So Ankit, can you tell us a little bit about you and what EasyFi does?
Hi, this is Ankit, and I represent EasyFi. EasyFi was the first layer 2 lending protocol started in 2020. We were the first DeFi company on Polygon, and we have so far had very good success. And now we are heading into the new version of DeFi and working on various different things related to MetaFi and like lending for metaverses. I had a talk yesterday on that, and a couple other things.
Okay, pretty broad then. Michael, can you tell us a little bit about Okra?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Michael So, co-founder at Okra Finance. Okra Finance is the permission DeFi composable index platform. So effectively, we combine three things into one. One is the fact that we have the on-chain dApp GUI that allows the fund manager, financial advisors to create a fund on-chain and be able to execute against the liquidity venues. The second part is that we have the infrastructure to support the fact that these liquidity venues can be executed by the investors using the strategies created by the fund manager, financial advisors. And the third part is the fact that we put a permission layer on top of it, such that institutional guys can use the internal guidelines to be readily adopt these DeFi strategies.
Thank you. And finally, Don, you'll notice that Don is not Richard, but he is from QuantStamp. So give us a bit of a rundown.
Hi, everybody. My name is Don Ho. I'm the managing director of QuantStamp. If you have not heard of QuantStamp, QuantStamp is a Y Combinator-backed cybersecurity company. We do audits. We've secured about 90% of DeFi, worked with over 750 projects, and secured over $200 billion of digital asset risk.
So pretty good then. So what I'd like to talk a little bit more about today is, well, what I want to focus on is trying to involve you guys as much as possible. We're only up here as a bit of a boilerplate, but actually the people that are learning are you guys. So if you have a question, please raise your hand as quickly as you can. I will try and see it. If I don't see it, grab somebody for the tech team, and we'll get a mic over to you, and we can get a question up here and riff on that. But before I go too much further into that, I want to kind of set the stage and understand what the hell is DeFi 2.0. I mean, we've got so many buzzwords with inside the industry. It feels like another. Yeah, what is it to you, and why does it matter? I'm going to throw that to you, Ankit, first.
So in my view, DeFi 2.0, like the evolution of any industry, is basically progression from what we existingly have. And like I was discussing, is DeFi 2.0 essentially is going to have progression in two different sides. One is bringing in better out of the existing functionalities of the DeFi 1.0 by bringing in better liquidity efficiency. And in a minute, I'll give an example of what I mean. Second part is the evolution of DeFi on the functional standpoint, where bringing in new functionalities, new innovation in using smart contracts for financial products. So these are the two directions in which I see DeFi 1.0 progressing into DeFi 2.0. And to give an example and context for people to understand it better, when I talk about better efficiency in liquidity, still utilizing the existing functional parameters of DeFi 1.0. With that, I mean, like today when people deploy their capital and liquidity in Uniswap, that stays idle until it is used for the swap in a particular pool. So having money idle is a loss of interest in that manner, is a loss of yield. So as part of DeFi 2.0, and there are a lot of DEXs which are already working on this model, is that while the liquidity is idle in the pool, a portion of that gets deployed to other yield generating avenues like Aave, Compound, EasyFi, etc., where that capital which was locked in the contracts is earning yield and then is brought back the moment it is required for facilitating the swap. So this is an example where it's an evolution of existing functional nodes with better efficiency. And then the second part of bringing in more functional nodes into the DeFi, the functional capabilities, functional evolution of DeFi, is an example of like MetaFi, the lending for metaverses, which don't exist today, which is becoming part of DeFi. Then the second part is more structured products, like we recently had seen there are lending, unsecured lending that has started utilizing the social credibility from teller and issuance of microloans which are unsecuritized, uncollateralized. So that is also a functional evolution. And then on top of that, the structured products like credit default swaps on those loans, those are the structured products that we will see in DeFi 2.0.
So it sounds like a combination of like lots of different things working in tandem together. Don, this is more of a question in your area. Isn't that going to provide a shed load more risk to the users?
I think it can bring in more risk, but I think to Ankit's point, I think it brings in a lot more innovation. When I think about DeFi 2.0, there are the two prongs of, I think, technical innovation, using idle liquidity positions, but I think there's a very large commercial and adoption angle as well. So for example, at QuantStamp, we audit everything under the roof, whether that is GameFi, MetaFi, DeFi, but it's really doing it in a way that builds a standard of security and building a standard of development. By doing these standards where it is known security principles, known smart contracts that are reused, thinking about composability, while it brings in faster paces of innovation, it should also increase the security because of it. And so it's a two-pronged approach for everyone listening out here, which is from a user perspective, how do you increase your security posture and also have a better sense of due diligence for protocols who have good security posture? But it's also then taking a look at what DeFi 2.0 can bring and how much quicker we can use some of these protocols. Whereas we're not waiting for it to reach 10 million in TVL, 100 million, but maybe using it on a day one launch for asset managers as an example.
So that's a good lead in. Like on the institutional side of things, are you seeing that? Do they see it as a shift? Do they see it as something different? Do they just want to actually gain access to DeFi in general? Is it helping you as a business?
Sure. So to go back to what DeFi is, such that we can have a baseline to define perhaps what DeFi 2.0 may be. DeFi 1.0 have three prongs, two of which can easily transition into 2.0. The three prongs include the following. There is the location of value of transfer, where previously in TradFi, value of transfer happens in a centralized location, thereby having exposure to counterparty risk, for anyone using such locations. The second part is the fact that DeFi is non-custodial, and for also that reason, counterparty risk, settlement risk is significantly reduced using DeFi. The third prong is the fact that most DeFi aim to become a DAO structure where the decision of making within internally of a project can be a little bit more democratic. The institutional side really like the fact that the settlement risk and the counterparty risk can be reduced, perhaps sometimes eliminated, due to the fact that this value transfer is completely transparent, and also on the fact that some of the Zap style transaction technology used in DeFi can be applicable to a multi-steps transactions that are often seen in portfolio creations. So when we talk to the institutional guys, such as the regulated broker dealers, the financial advisors, investment advisors, RIAs as we call them, they oftentimes find that they can use DeFi to quickly deploy their own strategies and differentiate the market in a way that TradFi would not allow them to do so. Meaning the paperwork that is involved, the legal risk that's involved, the counterparty risk that we talked about, now completely change in a way such that they're able to utilize this technology to advance the businesses that cannot be previously done. So in our view, in addition to what Ankit, you were saying, from a functional advanced perspective, from a standardization of the risk assessment perspective, from an adoption perspective, we see that there's a lot of money sitting on the sideline waiting to tap into simply the technology functionality that allows them to do more things than they can today. So I guess combining all three together, if the 2.0 is defined by the actual TVL, if you will, then we can perhaps see that we're already on the path towards that, and we're probably trying to define exactly in hindsight, let's say 5 years down the road, what we have done to get to that point.
So it sounds like that we are talking a lot about the functionality and the broader macro view of what DeFi 2.0 is. And I really want to kind of dig down into the micro view and what does this actually mean for the user? Because ultimately, I think, we've been talking about it for what, 4 or 5 years now. Adoption is always going to be the Achilles heel. And so is DeFi 2.0 going to be a better experience? Are we actually... Should we be spending a huge amount more focus on UX UI rather than just pure functionality? Ankit.
Yes, absolutely. There are so many new platforms that have come, which are helping users. We'll come to you in a minute. So there are so many new platforms that have come in and are helping people who are not traditionally crypto native users to still be able to participate in yield generation opportunities, which allow you to deploy your capital through your bank debit cards, credit cards directly. So bringing in more seamless integrations with on-ramps and login options using email, so that people do not really have already existing the wallet creation mechanism. So those are the things that are evolving industry-wide for the better user adoption into Web3. So that is not local to DeFi, but yes, that is also going to impact the mass user onboarding into DeFi by enabling them to easily using their email address and using their social logins to be able to start using apps, and also be able to participate into DeFi using their debit cards, credit cards, and also a very important side in DeFi 2.0, which was already started at the time of 1.0, but could not really get the enormous adoption, is basically on-chain KYC. So the way I see that most of the protocols are going to get chip into these on-chain KYCs, where the problem with centralized systems and why we in the first place started to talk about DeFi was the sense of ownership, not the anonymity. So anonymity is not something that's such a compelling thing that people look for in majority of case, but the more important thing is the ownership of my money, the ownership of my assets. So that particular case can still be achieved while still having the KYC, so that you can keep bad actors at the way. So these are the things that I think are happening already on the UX side, on the mass adoption side, in addition to the functional advancement that we speak, which are going to become a natural integral part of DeFi 2.0.
A huge shot across the regulation bow just there, which we'll get to. But I really wanted to get to your question. Is there a microphone we can get down to this gentleman down here? Just shout and I'll reiterate.
Okay, I would like to take that answer because...
Just reiterate it for the live stream.
Okay, you mean the question?
Yeah, so
okay.
Well, let me
so
ask. So the question is interoperability across chain in DeFi 2.0. Go.
So that's a very good point you raised, and that's also an important factor that is coming in as part of DeFi 2.0. And there are already many projects who have launched cross-chain messaging systems, which are being now used by and being implemented by, as we speak, by different protocols, where essentially you are, let's say, for example, putting in one particular asset on Binance Smart Chain, which you have, and you want to take a loan in another asset, which is on, let's say, Polygon. So ideally, you as a user should not be worried about that where on which chain this asset exists. I own this asset in my address, which is common across the chains. So ideally, I should be able to put this as a collateral and take another asset which I want as a loan. So this is how the DeFi 2.0 looks like. Instead of you manually today using a bridge, transferring an asset to Binance Smart Chain to Polygon, and then from there taking a loan and then moving it to Avalanche. Instead of that, the universal layer, which is getting built using a lot of these messaging protocols that are built, like Chainlink launched one, there is something called Router Protocol, and a couple other cross-chain messaging systems which are now coming in, which are going to be enabling this kind of smooth cross-chain interoperable user experience.
So it's a really good point, because when I look at DeFi now, and especially like looking at what we're building for our own protocol, like a multi-chain future seems inevitable, but it's a mess right now. It's a total mess. How do you go about explaining that in a institutional facing way, Michael?
Yeah, when we spoke with the institutions, a lot of times today they still live and breathe on Ethereum. That's probably the maximum extent they can go about looking into DeFi today. We also have looked into and also trying to advance, the causes for the DeFi adoption from an institutional base on Avalanche, and perhaps also on BNB, which are significantly and completely different ecosystems. The way we see things is that from an institutional side, they look at values. They look at the downside risk protection. They look at a lot of things, that obviously have to do with the regulatory side of the equation. And at the end of the day, today, they are quite unable to go into a more advanced stage of cross-chain wormholes, bridging, because at the end of the day, all these solutions provide some sort of wrapping, some sort of counterparty risk, exposure, if you will, to all the guys looking at the risk side of the equation. And for that reason, they will be able to partake in such, bridging exercises, but they need to get the assurance of the fact that, oh, am I protected should one of the protocols are unable to perform such protection for me? So a lot of times it actually goes back to almost like a corporate bond portfolio, right? They will look at, the portfolio, they see that they may be correlated, but they will still want to buy an insurance in the form of a CDS. So oftentimes what we found, on our platform is that there are many liquidity venues that can be tapped into, but at the end of the day, they want to be financially protected from a policy perspective. And that's where insurance comes in, actually, interestingly.
Thanks for the nice plug. Don, when you're looking at this, like, there feels like there's another chain every other week, right? And somebody's building a new layer 0, and somebody's building a new layer 1, 2, whatever you want to call it. It must be extremely complicated from an auditing point of view, especially when there are new languages, implemented, albeit based off, much older ones. How do you assess? How do you go about assessing the risks involved with these brand new chains, and then like trying to interoperability assess them between different chains?
Yeah, it's really difficult. Because largely there are new paradigms. So to go back to the question first and foremost, how do we deal with an interoperable future? I think it looks a lot like games or social media networks we use today. Put another way, when we access Facebook or Instagram, do we know what database technologies are being used? No, we just want pictures of our cats and all of our food. And I think that in DeFi 2.0, 3.0, whatever it is, that is going to be very similar, where I don't know what chain I'm using, but I know what protocol or application I'm using. And on the back end, it's just routing altogether. Now, to your point, that presents a lot of new challenges in this interoperable future. I think the most immediate one will be bridges, right? I think the nuance of how to connect different blockchains via bridges or not bridges is so new that we don't fully know how to look at that end state of a DeFi for Facebook just yet. What we can't control, though, again, are standards around what smart contracts are being used, what are the most battle-tested languages, and from a user perspective, how many audit reports are there, right? And how many of them are actually interoperable with one another and are looking at multiple vectors of risk between, a Solana to Ether, Polygon to Ether, or anything else. And I think once we create these standards, we will bring in more FANG-like engineers who have better security posture. And by bringing more FANG-type engineers, that means we will harden some of these messaging systems, and that over time, it'll just work as if it was a Facebook or an Instagram.
So it sounds a little bit like the regulation question, which we obviously touched on at the end before we went to the question from the audience. But my concern around that is really, how do we do KYC? How do we do regulation in the right way? If we want to be compliant and we want mass adoption, like, it's going to have to happen, right? But where is the line drawn? Can you still have anonymity and operate with DeFi, the future of DeFi, so DeFi 2.0 for the sake of the word?
As I said, in my view, anonymity and regulation do not go hand in hand. So the regulators do want to know, they want to manage so that you can control the fraudulent, fraudulent activities, money laundering, terrorist financing, those kind of things. They are required to be kept at bay. And when you talk about anonymity, immediately you make gateway for these kind of things. So I think, like I mentioned, and I'm a strong believer of this, that if the regulations, and which definitely it will, have to come in while still preserving the decentralization and enabling decentralization, there will have to be hybrid models where the KYC exists, where the user, the address that is doing the transaction is known, is stored, but not being given as an address, as an information to every other protocol to know, but then if it is required, the information can be drawn out with the permission of the user being forced on that.
Will regulation kill the innovation, though? I mean, is it going to kill the APYs? Is it going to? Are we going to be handcuffed by this, Michael?
We see it differently, slightly. We see that DeFi, at the end of the day, right, allows the finality of, like I said before, the confirmation, the settlement, the value of transfer to happen on chain, and thereby eliminating some of the central counterparty risk. The KYC portion obviously is required, by law first and foremost. But at the same time, what we have seen, at least, on the conversations that we've had with clients, is that they would like the identity to be kept off chain, which is kind of, alluding to the fact that privacy is still being preserved. But not to forget the fact that, these are regulated entities who have licenses, papers, and policies to stick with. We, on our side, are already designing a process that allows, these off-chain transfer of information to be executable between just two counterparties without, losing the fact that, the privacy is preserved and not be shown on-chain. But in our opinion, we are all advancing towards a mass adoption. And for that reason, innovation, meaning like the advancements on functionalities and using DeFi, the more efficient, liquidity provisioning, all can be utilized using DeFi and still stick to this, the regime, that are currently in place.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a false choice. I don't think it needs to be binary. A really good example is the email protocol. All of us today can set up our own email server. We don't need a KYC for it, but we really like the ease and use of Google, Gmail, Yahoo, and as a result, we KYC, right? And so I do think all tides will lift all boats, where we're always going to have this permissionless world where we can go with our own pseudonymity and use our MetaMask. But there's also going to be another part of ourselves that maybe use more hosted and centralized services that tap into DeFi. Both are great. And I think having the option for users make DeFi so cool.
We've only got a few more minutes here, so if you've got a burning question, don't hold back, please. Oh, there's one over here. I'm not sure if there is mics in the audience, so please stand up and shout.
DeFi and Web 3.0 are looked at as a mechanism so we can keep our funds without the government freezing them. And you guys are saying we really want to be compliant with the government, and they're using that as a technology to say, hey, I want to be able to protect everybody else from fraud, but really what they're doing is getting your information so they can at some point in the future appropriate that or freeze it. But you guys are the mechanism for stopping that from happening. What I'm hearing is you're not going to stop it from happening. So can you help me understand that a little bit better?
Okay, so it's a good question. I'll reiterate it for the live stream. It's about the government overreach, and we're here talking about regulation and how it's coming and it's going to impact our businesses. But actually, the promise of Web3 and DeFi is the fact that you don't have that control by governments, and that's a huge issue around the world that people are facing. And I get your point. We're kind of here saying, well, we're going to have to regulate in order to survive. Is there a fine line that we can walk? Is there a way of being? I mean, we heard your view in terms of KYC and anonymity. Michael, can you still look after your own money in the future of DeFi, or is there always going to be a subset that's going to be private and secret?
The way we see it is both worlds will continue to exist in parallel, meaning the pools of money, the sources of money, who choose to partake in whichever way, whether it is the completely KYC regulated side or maybe the non-regulated side. There will be people who, basically, join these two particular ecosystem, if you will. And the way we see it is that, especially for institutions, institutions are oftentimes defined by what? The parties that are managing other people's money. Now, the key part is that if you allow someone else to manage your money, clearly you have already given away some of that, I guess, freedom, if you will. Right? But if you choose to directly interact with the value of transfer, as I said before, right, which is on-chain, finality completely defined, you're still able to do so. So that's why I said, I think the two worlds will continue to exist. Those who want to keep the license, if you will, those who want to basically manage other people's money and be able to basically show the fact that, yes, you have some sort of protections against, for example, let's say a protocol not being able to perform as they should. Then the regulator side will kick in. But otherwise, those who are more, I guess, a little bit more, more willing to, try new technology, will try the ways, that are more innovative and at the same time, not be as bound and handcuffs, in other ways.
Yeah, Don, is there a viewpoint from the auditor standpoint in terms of those networks and protocols that are more secret and more private, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think DeFi is unstoppable. I think code on the blockchain is really unstoppable. From a security perspective, what that means is smart contract auditing plays an even more important role now, because when you don't know your counterparty, all you have is code on the blockchain. Well, that can be verified. That can be audited specifically for non-custodial type transactions. So in places where there's not government oversight and where things are really unstoppable, I think smart contract audits become sort of a new arbiter that allow people to know that they can trust some software that is safe, that the code does what's intended to do without overreach. However, again, the world is not binary, and we don't have to choose one or the other. We can probably do both. And for certain pockets of money that you want to be yours, that's non-seizable, go the full unstoppable DeFi route. But for things like Okra or Easy, where you want to actually earn higher yield than you can achieve yourself, you can portion another part of your allocation into those things too. I think this blended future we will continue to see, will continue to evolve, but it will be both regulated and also unregulated.
And I think, Don, you've had the final word on the subject and what DeFi 2.0 is. I hope you've enjoyed the time this morning listening to what we've got to yabber on about. Thank you to all of my guests. Thank you for coming out this morning and listening. If you want to review it again, it's back online on YouTube. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
everyone.
I think at the heart of what they just said is a blended future, not just one, not just strictly KYC and regulation, not just Wild West, unregulated, be whoever you want to be, but a blend of both. And I truly believe it's a yes and world. So understanding interoperability, understanding DeFi, understanding these trends as being yes and more than this one or that one is definitely going to be something that benefits not only the creator, but the user at the end of the day. So when I first found out about NFT technology, the first thing I said, I kid you not, was I am an NFT. I had no idea what that meant. I really had not fully an understanding of what the technology was enough to even say something like that. But yet I felt it rang true. Now I call an NFT the tokenization of a unique digital asset. So I think I was onto something there when I said I am an NFT. As we build these virtual identities, as we build these virtual ways of being, already how we use social media could be the ideation behind what could now be a tokenization of becoming NFTs. You can become an NFT yourself, right? So I felt I was on to something. NFTs are something I'm so passionate about. I think it's a beautiful and simple solution to a somewhat complex problem. How do you provide ownership? How do you provide sovereignty for individuals in an internet world where everything seems so and is dominated by these conglomerate, these Web2 companies? Well, NFTs seems like just a solution for that problem, and I found it to be so just lavishly beautiful. That makes me excited to introduce our next panel. They're going to cover, what it is that NFTs can unlock, because not only are NFTs just how we can identify ourselves, but there's so much more than that. If you think about it as a product of a smart contract, as the tokenization of a unique digital asset, there's so many applications that can go beyond that. So without further ado, please help me, join me in introducing our next moderator, Cosmos Haas.
Hello, everyone. This segment is NFTs, Unlocking Pandora's Box for Real-World Assets, featuring Sid Patel with Comdex. Next, we have Michael Gollum with Fanvestor, Alan Carell with Baking Coin, and Jackson with Tangible. So my name is Cosmos Haas, and I'll be your moderator today. The fact that I'm even here today is a true testament to decentralization and community. I'm just like an accountant, basically, and COVID happened, it hurt, and I knew about crypto, and I said, I need to do something about this. I need to try to learn. And I spent thousands of hours and thousands of hours studying this, and I found Cosmos, and now I'm here. So I just, I'm going to ask a few questions. The first one is, we're going to start down at the bottom, or to the end and come closest. So it's a two-part question. in your opinion, what makes NFTs valuable, and what do you envision the future of NFTs to look like?
Sure. Obviously, value is very, very subjective, but I've got this core thesis that 2017 kind of dominated by ERC20 tokens, and then that token standard dominated this cycle. Back then, we saw the kind of ICO hype, a lot of that retail stuff, but things from back then to now look very, very different. So I've got that same thesis here, retail driven. We saw a lot of hype in NFTs now, but all kind of profile pictures. And we've got this core thesis that, yeah, it will dominate this cycle, but look very, very different. Towards the end of the cycle, real world assets in particular is what we kind of think will be the future of NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, we've had non-fungible tokens for real-world assets for a long time. In fact, when I checked into my hotel last night, they gave me one, but it was attached to a card and it was centralized, and that token gave me access to my hotel room. But never before have they been interoperable, composable, programmable in the way they are now, and the sort of things that will lead to, I think, are really interesting. In fact, also permissionless, like that NFT I got last night sat in that centralized server, but when it's on the blockchain or attached to my ENS name, then any application can start to use that and compose it. What we're doing with property and homes for the future, you look at across the world, something we take for granted is that we hold title to a property that you own, a house or some land, and you can enforce rights on that. And that ownership is actually composable in the US and a lot of the world. But in a lot of places it's not. People, like something like 70% of the land in the world is actually not have those property rights that are composable. So as we take that and people leapfrog into the new world on the blockchain with NFTs, we think that will open up a whole new place, whole new world in those places where people can use that for financing businesses and financing savings and investment in the future in a way that it's not possible today.
Yeah. So hello. So I work a company called Investor. It's a single platform for NFTs and securities. So to me, speaking in the same way as my colleagues here, capital markets, how do we take it to the next level? How do you create community? That's what NFT is about, right? And how you can finance things outside of traditional capital markets. And that's what we will talk later today.
So I think, the rest of the folks on the panel have covered pretty well what makes NFTs valuable. But to me, what I find, intriguing about it and what I truly see as a scope of building in the future for NFTs is the ability to establish a presence for off-chain assets on-chain, which means, any asset that exists in the real world that we deal with physically and tangibly, to create a presence for that on-chain and to kind of establish a clear track record of how that asset is moving is something that's going to be very valuable, especially as we see the worlds of centralized finance and decentralized finance merge together going forward.
Nice. Like I said, the fact that I'm even here right now is the testament of decentralization and NFTs. I absolutely love NFTs. I think they're going to be everything in the future, literally everything. So it's really fascinating what all you guys have going on. With your protocol or company doing, what do you think? How is your company going to capture that real world value?
Sure, yeah. We tokenize real world assets, fine wine, gold bars, watches, and our first property tomorrow. The way that we think about it is it's probably going to end up being a very, very large part of crypto, a large part of the crypto market cap. The total market cap for all real estate is 350 trillion. So if we're able to capture even 10% of that, it's obviously going to, balloon the market cap of crypto. Yeah, huge market. Obviously, a lot of people now kind of getting interested in it. The interesting thing is it's kind of been an abandoned space. 10 years, kind of people have been talking about it, trying it, but now it's getting a fresh wind.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that's happened in those 10 years. A lot of people trying and playing in the space, and it's cool to see your first property go up tomorrow. We're doing something similar, although instead of tokenizing the property itself, we tokenize the collateral. So the value of the home, we have a lien that's It's placed on the home just like with a mortgage, and it's registered at the counties. There's 3,000 counties in the US, so it's already somewhat just decentralized and distributed, but we take that and put it on chain, and then you can lend and borrow against it in a way that you can in the real world in a lot of places, but not as efficiently and composable as you can once the NFT goes on chain. We can use it in our lending protocol, but so many other people could take that piece of house. You could sell it. You could pledge it other places, and then that brings up all this power that you have once you own a home and once you own property on chain, and all that value that you talked about is really unlocked in a new way. And so the thing we're doing, we have 35 of these home NFTs on chain already, over 7 million lent, and $44 million worth of home value that's now on chain for people to use and compose. So, as that grows, you look at mortgage lending in the United States, it's about $2 trillion a year is lent, but across the world, much, much more in places where you just can't even get a mortgage or a loan because that collateral is not available in composable ways to use in regular finance. And so you think about the way that some places have skipped straight to cell phones and never wired the whole country. You can skip straight into DeFi for these places and miss kind of the steps along the way, but you get something cool in the end.
Maybe before I tell you about Finvestor, I tell you a bit about my background, how we came up with this idea. So in my career, I've taken 2 companies public. I was a CFO of a few public trade companies, and I was in the founding team of Bitfury. Maybe you guys know that company. I was a CFO and board member of that company. So I've been blockchain for quite some time and in capital markets. And what was missing about, for example, taking David Bowie, when he bought back his masters back in 1990s, and his fans basically financed them. Think about Green Bay Packers being owned by the owners and not really even making any money. It's not for profit. Yet for them, the ROI is putting their jerseys on Sunday, right? And saying, that's my team. So the concept of taking that concept, taking concept of a Jobs Act with Reg CF, Reg A Plus regulations, where you can bring both accredited and non-accredited investors into play, we created Finvestor. So we're a broker dealer. We do fractional ownership. We do royalty-based securities. We're pushing the envelope a little bit further. We do meta assets backed by securities and things like that. Example, with NFTs, we're right now doing compilation. We have decentralized music vertical and decentralized sports, where we basically create, imagine a vinyl comes with your NFT, and it's new and upcoming artists. And the money that is raised for the NFTs is used to market that music through Spotify and everything else. It's not a money grab opportunity. It's what we see right now, what a lot of artists, musicians do. And we focus more on things like that, or fractionizing a football team in Europe, or UFC fighters wanted to continue and then collaborate. And then also taking, imagine taking, let's say Babe Ruth baseball, right? If you go to eBay, probably $50,000 depending on the year. Imagine fractionizing it and give it to many people at $100 each. The price will probably go up because you have more demand. People, when you go to $100 or less investment, people don't invest with this, they invest with that, right? So that's what I'm thinking about. I think how we're going to go to the next level. At least what we focus on NFTs securities in sports and media, sports and music verticals.
So for Comdex, actually our journey started in 2018 when we built out our first application, which was an enterprise-focused B2B application for physical commodities trading. And what we did back then was actually, I mean, that application is still live. So what we do on that application is we have commodity cargo assets that exist in the real world. There's the documents that represent the ownership of these cargo. We're able to capture these documents on chain as NFTs. And from there on, we're able to create this sort of ecosystem where institutional traders who trade these assets are able to trade these NFTs on chain. So our journey actually began with tokenizing a real world asset as an NFT on chain. And in terms of what we want to kind of do going forward at Comdex as well is to facilitate tokenizing more and more off-chain assets on chain. So, you know, starting with commodities, because that's a $17 trillion industry. And some of the folks who kind of started off building with us already have a presence in the commodity space and helped us understand the space to understand that there's definitely a demand for something like this there. But in terms of going forward, you know, as supply chains around the world grow, I believe there's definitely huge applications for NFTs within the supply chain space as well. in terms of capturing, assets, invoices, documents as NFTs on chain, which can then be used to further create financing and, the other sort of financial ecosystem around it as well.
So everything you guys are saying is fascinating, but I want to try to play devil's advocate. What do you see as like a pitfall or hurdle or regulatory issue, whether it's with your company or just in general with the NFT space?
Regulatory hurdles for sure. No one's really sure, are these things securities? Where do they stand, particularly in the US? We block US users. Another hurdle, of course, is just self-custody. Actually getting these things into the end user's hands is probably pretty difficult right now. So there's a lot to solve for there. And then the third thing is trust. At the moment, crypto is largely trustless. To kind of bridge this gap at the moment requires a lot of trust. So there's definitely some hurdles there as well.
I agree. Those are the three big things. And the user experience for me is the one that's the biggest hurdle that I see. We're still in this place where you've got to go in and get all the things set up, and it takes a lot of research and figuring out. And there's so many places where you can just fall into a trap and a hole and lose money or put things in the wrong place. And so for our borrowers, we provide kind of a front end centralized place for them to go and get help. They don't even know, for some of them, that it's DeFi on the back end, but it provides all the value and benefit of DeFi through that front end. Over time, we'll decentralize it and provide better user experiences and put it directly in people's hands. But now we're going through this infancy, kind of like the early days of the internet, where it just was tough to use. You had to be fairly technically proficient. Those things, that's kind of the biggest hurdle, I think, to getting more adoption and seeing this get into more hands and more benefit to people.
As you can imagine, for me, it's compliance. That's what I'll speak about. So we see, it really reminds me back of .com days. I was joking with the guys, I'm old enough to remember that, and earlier. Also ICO days, when a lot of people tried to push the envelope a little bit too much. And Security Exchange Commission, it's not a bad entity, it's actually good. They're trying to protect investors, trying to protect retail investors, protect our grandparents, or everybody taking their 401ks and putting to something. So there's nothing wrong with it. But some people just try to push the envelope. We seen earlier this year, already several companies received subpoenas from SEC to review what's going on because they were selling securities and immediately trading on the secondary market on open seas. So basically getting creators in trouble and investors in trouble. Because eventually, as you guys remember, SEC always wakes up, always comes back and puts things in order. And people will get in trouble, unfortunately. Some people will get away, but mostly it always comes back. So compliance, I think, especially in our community, people think, well, I don't want rules. We want to be decentralized and everything else. Some things, unfortunately, have to be centralized because it protects people, regular people, and especially with NFTs. What's exciting about NFT? We bring new people into the blockchain, into crypto. They were not before in our space, and that's what's exciting about it. So.
No, I think everything that was said so far is absolutely, it covers entirely what the biggest challenges with NFTs could be. I think custody is going to be a big kind of question that the industry needs to figure out going forward, because anytime we talk about a physical asset in the real world being represented as an NFT on chain, one of the questions will always be, where is it stored, who's taking custody of it, and what's kind of the insurance around that custody. And also, I think compliance is a very good point, because a lot of us folks in the DeFi realm, like to keep our identities hidden behind MetaMask IDs or wallet addresses and not really reveal who we are behind all of these. But I think as the lines between DeFi and traditional finance sort of start to blur, we will see kind of a need for KYC when it comes to users trying to access maybe real world assets as NFTs on chain. And that's one of the challenges we as an industry might have to start opening up to going forward, whether it is to custody assets like commodities in the real world, or if it's real estate. All of these assets at the end of the day have, at least on the traditional finance side of things, a lot of KYC, AML clearance processes behind it. So I don't see a way around it. I think it's a matter of both industries kind of working together to find a harmonious solution for it.
Nice. So with Michael's point about NFTs, I believe that's the best way for people to learn about crypto. And the biggest hurdle, I think, in general, is just the lack of education. You know, that's kind of why I got involved with crypto. I do shows and I just try to educate people because I spent thousands of hours doing this. And I know people that are working 40, 50 hours a week, they just don't have that time. So we do shows, it's called Cosmos Spaces. We have developers come up, and then I just basically put those shows into layman terms for just the average person out there that's just listening in. And I just totally agree with like Michael's point. And like go back to you, Michael. Like I'm a big sports guy. So say I bought a ticket and I wanted to put it on chain and use your service. How would I do that?
Sure. Well, for us, like I said, we are, think of us as, maybe you guys heard, Start Engine, Republic for crowdfunding, right? We actually adding it a little further. We're focusing on specific verticals. We work with celebrities, creators. We work with their social media bases and to work. So let's go back to your question. So recently, NUL, one of the singers, he put, and a few other folks, tried to take tickets that people came in to see the show and it connected them to future benefits. Okay, that's not a security, right? It's a basic item. It's perks, right? Warriors, my team, go Warriors. They're also thinking about doing things like that, where you can connect and you do fractionalization. Imagine final tickets for finals. That probably would be worth something. It's like it's a collectible, right? If it's one-to-one, that's non-security. But it's they're gonna go for gonna fractionize it. That's a become security, right? So if that can answer your question about how we put this, but we are primary. We basically do primary offerings, and then later securities can be then traded, not at OpenSea, not at Nifty, but they're traded on ATS platforms like Securitize, Rialto, T0, companies like that, and that's a little different approach.
You know, I was going to kind of ask you the same thing. Like, let's say I purchased a home and maybe it's paid off. Like, why would I want to use your service as opposed to just like calling the bank?
Well, I think the interesting thing here, especially with your example, is that things blur in crypto. It's not necessarily a security or utility like it is in a lot of places in the real world. It's a security and a utility potentially. And so how do you regulate that when it's, you know, you've got all these things that are kind of lumped in together and it's programmable and it's this whole new thing that we've got to really think about and not just try to apply the existing rules to. So for example, for us, you bring your house and we'll, you know, we do some KYC when you borrow. Obviously we need to know you own the house. So we register with the county. And then once it's an NFT though, that's a utility token that you can take and use in our lending protocol. So you can borrow, the rates are better, the experience is faster and easier. So there's all this benefit you get from that. But then you can also that can be an NFT that represents your piece of collateral in the home that you can go and use other places potentially. And so it becomes a utility thing for you. It's not necessarily this thing. And so it's a really interesting place where we're building this new thing that needs kind of new ways of thinking about the regulation and the security around it.
Jag, I asked you the same thing. Like let's say I was a wine connoisseur or just like I love watches. Like what would I use your service for?
Sure. So we have partners, stockists for these things. The largest fine wine retailer in Europe. You browse, you buy the item, we store it for you. You have the NFT. You know, take it off in DeFi and use it, trade it, borrow against it. I think more interesting than those things is property. Over 90% of our users have said that they care about property the most, mainly because it's yield producing. So our first property delivers 16.6% annual yield, rent claimable the next day after you buy it, $50 ticket size, straight into your wallet. It's just simplifying the process, right? It makes the process many multiples better than it is currently. But takes 15 seconds as opposed to a week.
Good. Let me give you guys another example. So imagine, let's talk about example of David Bowie. So when David Bowie changed his managers back in 1990s, he used to lose 87 cents on every dollar to record label company. When he used bankers to buy back his master's $55 million back he basically started paying 7.9% interest every 6 months, well, per year, every 6 months to people who financed him. All of a sudden, he went from losing 87 cents to basically paying 8 cents on the dollar. That was done during 1999, when people can invest only through New York Stock Exchange, right? And that's it. Imagine if he were to do it today. You can do it through social media, and we can also use, the regulations have changed, but now you can use social media and data science to convert investors, to push it to the masses across the whole world. So what we are doing, and then right now, the same model still exists with record label companies. They still take 70 to 80%, and they do 360 degrees, right? Imagine if for artists who don't have to tie to that, they collaborate with their fans. Fans, let's take 40%. 40% goes to the artists, 10% goes to creators, 10% goes to this company like us who would help that process. You get two things. One, the artists feel that they appreciate it, they get more. Two, they create communities, which later can collaborate with these people and push it for marketing purposes. And it just push envelope. So that's kind of a couple of projects that we're working on, just to give you a couple ideas.
And then Sid, you guys are in the commodities and synthetic derivatives. Why would someone want to use your platform, and what value do you bring to those?
So one of the kind of core concepts of finance, especially when it comes to traditional finance, is the ability to kind of collateralize any asset of value and generate liquidity against it, whether it's to borrow against it in the form of a mortgage or a debt. What we kind of want to do is facilitate this process on chain, where you have an asset in the sort of real world, which is a physical asset. You have its presence on chain in the form of an NFT. And then this NFT kind of serves as collateral in the DeFi ecosystem, and people are kind of able to borrow against it and earn, and lenders are able to lend to people who are borrowing with these assets as collateral and see that as a yield to be earned from something that's an asset in the real world. So this is kind of where we come in, where we want to enable, the average mom and pop investor who's in DeFi to kind of generate yield from real world products and instruments that they wouldn't have access to if they were going through the traditional banking routes. A lot of times, traditional investors who have speculative kind of insights on things like commodities aren't actually able to invest directly in commodities because of problems of custody and the cost of and the risks associated with kind of custodying such assets. But to have all of this happen on chain would just allow the average DeFi Joe to be actually providing some sort of liquidity to a financial instrument that's financing a real world asset. So that's where we kind of come in. It's to recognize these assets of value from the traditional world, bring it on chain, and then treat them as an asset of value on chain as well, whether it's as collateral or to exchange and so on.
So we have about 2 minutes or so. So I commend what all you guys are doing. You guys are trying to change the world, and that's why I'm here. And so how would those get a hold of you? What's the best contact for all you guys?
Tangible.store. There's a contact us form there, but that's how you find Tangible. If you'd like to buy some wine, watches, real estate, anything, real world assets on chain in your wallet, live now.
Yeah, for us too, baconcoin.com is where you can find the DeFi protocol, and then LoanSnap or GoLoanSnap.com is if you're interested in borrowing or creating an NFT against your home, we can help you out there.
Finvestor, you guys can see the website, finvestor.com. I will give you my personal email. It's mgolumb@finvestor.com. Welcome.
For Comdex, you guys can find it on comdex.one, comdex.one, and from there you should be able to find pretty much everything with Twitter, Telegram, and all of that sort.
I just offer my door is always open. We can do some Twitter spaces because 30 minutes with you guys is just not enough. So it would be nice to just keep it going, really, to be honest with you, because I applaud all you guys. Like it's really awesome to see what you guys are trying to do to bring value and from traditional to DeFi, and just this is amazing. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's so interesting when you hear people speaking about NFTs, because usually they're speaking about, PFP projects, Sport Ape Yacht Club. They're speaking about the new pudgy penguins. They're speaking about these things in forms of art, right? Or in forms of being able to participate in a community, a social token, a way to be a part of a social club. But it's nice to have a panel where we're seeing different utilizations of this NFT technology, being able to capture real world assets and then turn them into NFT experiences, being able to go to shows and have tickets be NFTs. As I said, NFT is the tokenization of a unique digital asset, which means that its applications are renowned. It's not just art or profile pictures, even though that's not a bad thing, but it can go quite well beyond that. And that is the reason that I love NFTs so much. As I said earlier when I was introducing that panel, the first thing I said when I found NFT technology was, I am an NFT. I felt like my identity could be wrapped up in this technology and I'd have true ownership over that identity. For the first time, considering that Web 2 takes my identity and uses it in ways in which only benefits them and actually detracts from my life because I get all these spam ads and start wanting things that I never even knew I wanted before, right? And so how do we utilize NFT technology to take back that ownership over our identity, to take back who we actually are, but then to have an ability and a vehicle to profit from that? Well, our next speaker is going to come to the stage and tell you exactly just that. So without further ado, let me introduce our representative from KILT Protocol, Mr. Ingo.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for this introduction. That was pretty perfect. So yes, I think NFTs are really important in the Web3 world because what they're doing is they're bringing back, or they're solving the problem of ownership in the internet. But there's more problems in the internet, in the Web 2 that we have to solve. And one of them is obviously identity, because as you just said, it has been taken away from us. And we have to reclaim it in a way. And KILT is exactly doing this. So how does it basically work? It works as a blockchain, as you can see. And what we do with KILT is that we give you a decentralized identifier. Those things are called DID. You can compare them in the real world to your face or your fingerprint or something. And this identifier is made by yourself on your computer, just like your face is also made by yourself. And then we add verifiable credentials to that, and verifiable credentials can be compared to driver's licenses, university degrees, things like that, which are also totally decentralized in a way. And they are stored in your wallet, and just like physical credentials are stored in your wallet, and you decide what you do with them, who to show them, for what reason, and when. And so actually we're copying the idea of the physical world identity into the technology world. And this has been done, and it's part of the infrastructure of the Web3 that we need to actually roll out Web3 applications. And now I think after a lot of things like NFTs, like ownership, like KILT with identity, also protocols like Filecoin with data storage and all that have been rolled out a couple of years ago. It is time now to build great applications. And what I'm going to show you today is some applications which are pretty useful, which are already Web3 applications. Those three. So let's start with where it always starts, with a wallet. So how do I find out if I'm in the Web 2 or if I'm in the Web 3? Well, if the application tells me, please log in with your username and password, then you are in the Web 2. If your application tells you, please log in with your wallet, then you're in the Web 3. So that's basically the difference between the two. You all know wallets. Wallets normally hold coins. They can also hold NFTs. But of course, Web3 wallets also need to hold identities,
Because your wallet here, which is in your pocket, not only holds coins, it also holds your credentials, right? So this is a wallet called Sporran, which is a KILT wallet. It shows your balance. So this person has 4.9 KILT, but you can also see the credentials and you can manage your on-chain DID. So you can manage your identity with this wallet. So there's a little bit more functionality in there. On top of that, we have been building a nice application called Social KYC. You all know KYCs. You have made them for logging into exchanges and stuff like that. I'm not doubting KYC. KYC can be useful for everything that is around money and real world money especially. But there's many use cases in the internet where I really don't need to know if somebody is from the US or from China, where I really don't need to know what street address of this person is, but where I actually need to know who he is in the internet, especially in the gaming. This is very important. I need to know which Discord account this person has. I need to know which Twitter account this person has. I need to know which email this person has, because then I can narrow down who this person is in the internet. And this is a Web3 service that we introduced called Social KYC, which makes it clear who you are actually talking with in the internet, which internet personality this is, without using any government type KYC thingies. This can be quite useful. Looks like this. You go to socialkyc.io, and then you choose what you want to have confirmed, like your email address. Then this thing writes you an email. You confirm this email, and then you have proven you own this email address, obviously. What you get in return is a credential. And this credential is signed by Social KYC, and it belongs to you. And you can store it in your wallet, and then you decide who you show it to, for what reason. So for example, if a login service wants you to prove your email address, you can just show from your wallet this thing, and you don't have to prove your email address again. And you can also prove multiple things, like your Discord account, your Twitter account, and your email address if you want. So another thing that we have built is DidSign. And DidSign, I think, is a really important application, because you all have signed some stuff in the internet probably already. There are some applications out there, I don't want to name them, where the first thing you do is you upload your secret documents to a server you don't control, and which always feels very strange for me. And then you can say, I want this signed by this person, and then this person gets an email and has to click somewhere, and that is actually the security in there. So I feel that is not really secure. And then you pay a lot of money for it. So this is the Web 2 way. In the Web 3, we can do much better. We now have DidSign. DID stands for Decentralized Identifier. And you can use your DID, which is in your wallet, to sign documents. But not only documents, you can sign software, you can sign source code, you can sign even executables, you can sign movies, you can sign music, whatever you want. Everything that is digital can be signed with DidSign. It is not uploaded anywhere. Everything that you do with DidSign is working inside your browser. So you're uploading it basically from your hard disk into your own browser, and then you sign it, and then you have a signed document, and you can share this document in any way that you want. You don't have to send it via email. You can send it with a secure line. You can even put it on a memory stick and send it via post. So this, I think, actually beats the Web 2 applications by far. And you can use it. It's out there. It costs nothing, totally for free. How could we charge for it? Because it's happening in your own browser. We don't control it. We don't see anything that you do there. It's DidSign.io if you want to play around with it. Very, very helpful thing. How does that look? So this is how DidSign looks. You got the document there. You got the signature there. You see the signature, nothing is stored on the blockchain as long as you just sign something because it's happening locally. But the validity of your signature can be checked on the blockchain because a part of the DID is stored, and the public part of the DID is stored on the blockchain. So anyone who receives such a document can check if the document is valid, if no one has tampered with it, and that the DID is the correct one. Now, DIDs look a little bit crazy. DID, KILT, lots of words or lots of letters. To make this easier, we introduced a service called Web3 name, or W3N, which translates a DID to a unique string that you choose. And that's the W3N. So I'm W3N Ingo. And there's, of course, also a service for that. And then this is a one-to-one connection, of course, so no one else can be W3N Ingo. If I have my DID, this is one-to-one connected on the blockchain with a DID. So here's a little service called W3N.id. You can use that on your phone as well if you like. Type in Ingo, and what you get is my DID. And what you also get is service endpoints. Service endpoints are credentials which I have chosen to publish. So I took them out of my wallet and published them on Pinata or something like that. If they are published, everyone can see them. And you can, if you try that out and go to w3n.id and type in Ingo, you can click on fetch and see the credentials, and then you can see which Twitter credential, which email credential I actually have. And then you can really nail down that the document which you received was actually signed by exactly this internet person. So that was basically 3 or 4 little applications that are already here. And I was here to tell you that Web3 is a little bit more than NFTs, and that it is actually happening and is not something which is in a white paper or dream or something. So these are business applications which are right now already in use in businesses. So that was basically it. Thank you very much.
As I said, having a ways to own your identity creates such a powerful and new, I don't even have the words for it because it just feels so exceptional to be able to get into a new space that says, hey, for the first time you can have ownership. And when we truly break down what it means to have ownership, especially in this world that is asking you to rent more and more and to not actually own anything, to have technologies that are supporting ownership, not only for assets that could give you financial freedom, but ultimately for your identity. I just think that's extremely powerful. And I think it's extremely powerful that it's brought to us by technology and the same methods of technology that currently are extracting from us through these Web 2 social media sites can now add to us. And I think that's just so beautiful how we can flip the script. That being said, let's transition over to blockchains, to layer 1s, right? Layer 1s are created in order to provide solutions, right? In order to provide solutions to problems that we currently had. Well, our next speaker has a solution, an EVM, that is promising to be faster and better and create more value than ever before. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage, Jesse Schulman.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having fun out here. I've got a chance to meet a lot of people today and yesterday, had some great talks, so I hope everybody else is enjoying their time here. So I'm with Telos. I'm the head of engineering and I'm also the chief architect of our EVM. And here today to talk about building the fastest EVM out there. So how do you build the fastest EVM? Well, the way we did it was we started with the fastest blockchain out there, and then we added the EVM. So We launched our EVM in November, but our native network, and we call it native now because we added the EVM, we have to differentiate. So our native network is a high speed and high capacity network. When you talk about performance, you need to think about the capacity it can hold and how fast it can do it. So our block times on our native network are half a second, 2 blocks per second, and we can process thousands of transactions per second without any layer 2 rollups or anything like that. That's just our layer 1 network that can do that. So when we decided we wanted to build the EVM and provide EVM support on top of that technology and the power that we have with our native network, we built it as a smart contract on the native network. So if you think about it, the power and ability of the native network is so incredible that we were able to build the EVM runtime in a smart contract on the native network. So it's not a fork of any of the Ethereum clients like Go Ethereum or Parity or anything like that. It's a custom runtime built on top of our native network in a smart contract. It inherits all of the speed, performance, all the governance and decentralization that our native network has because it is on the same network. We like to talk about blockchainception, a blockchain within a blockchain, because it is just one network with both EVM support and our native network, which has many apps and a lot of benefits as well. So for 3.5 years, it's been running the native network without any halting, no stopping. I think in about 5 days, we'll hit the 3.5-year mark. We didn't do any ICO. We're a grassroots blockchain. We launched without raising money, and everybody who's contributed has been working to earn our token because they believe in the technology. And as part of that no ICO launch, we did a very decentralized distribution. We didn't have any heavy insider control of the network. It's a very grassroots and decentralized, the true spirit of blockchain that we have. So our EVM itself, the smart contract that executes all of those Solidity contracts and provides the EVM functionality that was audited by Sentinel. They're actually also a validator on our network. After the work we did with them, they came on board. They do a differential fuzzing, and if you don't know what that means, it means they took the two implementations of an EVM side by side. They took ours and Go Ethereum, and they automated inputs and outputs and made sure the results were the same so that we behave identically. It was a great experience. In fact, they did turn up one bug that some people may have seen towards the end of last year. In Go Ethereum, they provided them with the results, and some nodes were affected on the Go Ethereum-based networks. So that was a really good experience, and we're really happy with the results that they did for us. So for developers out there, why would you build on the Telos EVM? Well, for the same reasons that we built it. So we were very happy. We loved the technology we had with our native network, the speed and the performance, but we wanted to expose ourselves to the EVM and Solidity developer ecosystem, all the tools, the mature, Open Zeppelin contracts, everything that you get when you're building on an EVM. We wanted that exposure of the technology we loved for the much broader ecosystem. So when you think about EVMs and many of the implementations, you think about front running, fluctuating gas fees, things like that. We don't have any of that because of the capacity. Think about like at a stadium, if there's nobody in line, you don't need to pay to cut in line. So the gas fees are flat, transactions go through with half-second block times. You don't have to think about how much gas you want to spend. The transaction lifecycle with the half-second block times, if you have like a use case for GameFi or some examples like that, and you want some better resolution than waiting 10, 15 seconds for a block to go through to see the results and have somebody else build on top of what that transaction did. You can do lots of different use cases when it only takes a second before a transaction can go through and the next transaction can build on top of that. And with that many transactions possible, chaining them together so quickly, well, you want low cost transactions and deployments of contracts. So we have very low fair gas prices, and it allows you to really take advantage of the capacity of the network. And the noisy neighbor problem, that's what we like to say in software, when it's a high traffic time, you won't feel that the network's getting a lot of traffic because it has such high capacity that if maybe another app on the network is really busy, you're not going to notice it. So for users, no, really, why EVM? I didn't understand all that technology stuff. So you're not going to be waiting on transactions to go through. Sometimes you might send a transaction, your wallet estimates gas price, it goes up. Now you're waiting for the network to slow down or considering paying to speed up your transaction. You don't have that anxious feeling for 30 seconds, a minute, hoping to see your transaction included in a block. For instance, like an NFT mint, you're not going to have the problem where you spent a bunch of gas hoping to get an NFT that everybody wanted to mint, and then finding out, well, you spent the gas, but you didn't get an NFT because somebody else came in and they were willing to put more gas and get in front of you, right? So, and similarly, you know, MEV, that's miner extracted value. I think in the last 30 days, $18.8 million has been extracted through MEV without front running, without the ability to cut in line in front of the retail investors that maybe didn't set their slippage properly on a DeFi transaction or something. You just don't have that. So without that, then the retail user doesn't have to worry about slippage and if they're going to get a sandwich trade against them. And again, GameFi, the things that you can do, the type of applications you might be able to interact with, there's a lot more possibilities with the speed and performance and capacity that you see and the low latency transactions. So for our EVM, what's next? Well, like I said, we launched it in November. We spent almost a year. I think we started building it in January. Spent a long time on testnet, did a lot of engineering work, testing, went through the whole audit process, which can take a long time. And we launched it just at the end of November. So we're really excited to see all the applications that have started coming in. And just like we expected, the whole ecosystem and the tools and all the apps that you've seen on all the other EVMs really are a great experience to use those on our network with the speed and performance and the great user experience it offers. So we're working on an EVM 2.0, which will make it a lot easier for node operators. It'll have a smaller resource footprint, easier to spin up nodes and just maintain them and keep them running. And it'll have comprehensive RPC compatibility right now. All the tools that most developers would use work just fine, but there's some real obscure, kind of seldom used RPC methods that we don't currently support that we're going to get to full compatibility with our EVM 2.0. We're going to have a token bridge between our native network and our EVM, because as I am here talking about our EVM, our native network has a lot of tokens, a lot of projects. A lot of people I've talked to here actually have used some of those apps and not realized that they're built on Telos. But those projects now can all bridge their tokens into our EVM, where on the EVM, as we all know, the decentralized exchanges, the AMMs and things like that are much more common. There's a lot more DeFi activity in the EVM. So being able to bridge all of our native tokens into the EVM to participate in DeFi, but letting apps run on native where we have some other benefits like feeless transactions and things that those apps chose our native network for. We're also working on other integrations between native and EVM, so further interoperability between the two, letting native contracts interact with EVM contracts. Just creating that better interoperability will really help, although it is the same network, you know, you can kind of think it as cross-chain. And just further integration between the two will just really help bridge those two and grow our ecosystem across both. And then we have our own block explorer called TeloScan. So we're going to continue to be improving that. A lot of people have been asking for a holders page and different things for like token exploration. So that is going to be one of the main things we focus on, just being able to explore what's happened on chain and presenting the data in a really nice user-friendly way, along with the API we have used to build our block explorer. We offer that as a public service to anybody that wants to build an app. So the data you see in the explorer, an account's historical transactions, which NFTs they own, the token balances of a particular token, all that data will be available publicly. We're working on an S-Telos yield-bearing token. We have staking rewards in our native network, and a lot of EVM users just want to stick with MetaMask or their EVM wallet. So we're using the ERC 4626 standard to implement that and make our staking rewards available to the EVM users. And we have a lot of ecosystem incentives coming where we're going to just incentivize the daily active user count, TVLs, just really help incentivize apps to come build on our EVM, metric-driven rewards to help them bring users and grow our ecosystem. So come be part of the future. We're here on the second floor with our booth. We'll be at Consensus. And just please come stop by, say hi, come talk to me or somebody, and be part of the future. So thank you.
DCENTRAL loves Telos as one of our sponsors, so thank you for being here. And thanks for sharing that. We need solutions that are going to provide speed, that are going to provide stability, and are going to be a home for new creators, because that's what we need. We need to create. Now is the time to build. Yes, they say bear market. That's why we have ramen for you downstairs, because we understand the struggles. But that being said, just because it's a bear market doesn't mean you need to go into hibernation. Now is the time to build. Now is the time to create. And if you've seen anything from this stage, I hope you've seen that there are creators out here making beautiful things, not just talking about ideas, but executing on them and creating solutions to problems that we currently have. Speaking of solutions, right? One thing about Web3 is that it may be, to some people, a little inaccessible, a little confusing, a little convoluted, right? There's no streamlining of how to utilize certain aspects of the technology. Well, our next presenter is creating a solution to become the search engine for blockchains, to make this easy and simple so that Google doesn't have to dominate the floor anymore, but Web3 companies can come in on the scene and dominate. So without further ado, please help me in joining to the stage KILT DAO representative, Mr. Rudy Rong.
Hey, so I'm here to talk about Web3 data and the first search engine for the Web3 data. But before, where's slides? Slides working? Oh, here we go. So yeah, before we dive in, I want to tell you a little bit personal story about myself. So my parents were actually first generation internet entrepreneurs in China. And they founded a company called Bianfeng Gaming in 1999. And it later became the largest social casino companies in China. However, in the summer of 2012, before I boarded the plane going back to China, I heard the news that both my parents were detained by the police and all of our games were taken down from the internet by the Chinese government. So, well, they later fortunately got able to go out within a month and sold the company to the government for a little shy of $1 billion. But what I was really shocked was that how vulnerable $1 billion gaming platform could be. You know, millions, 100 millions of users could be ripped their rights to access their gaming data instantly by a central entity. So the idea of creating something decentralized and immune to policy changes came to my mind. So during the 2017 Forbes 30 and 30 party, Justin Song introduced me to blockchain. And with decentralized data storage, I was able to create something robust and decentralized for game publishing, MagicCube. And during the process, I noticed a significant difference between Web 2 and Web 3. So within Web 2, companies use content to attract traffic. And by monopolizing the user data, user content, companies are like Google and Facebook are eventually able to monopolize the whole industry. But what really makes Web 3 superior? Is this the content? Well, obviously not, right? When you look at Axis Infinity or Steppen, they did accumulate over $1 billion in revenue within 6 months. But are their graphic or playability really better than Call of Duty or World of Warcraft, the traditional games? Well, the answer is definitely not. But there is one thing that only Web3 companies can do, is the incentive programs. So by putting all the data on chain and rewarding users with tokens. These Web3 products are able to give the ownership and data access back to its users. Now the question becomes, how does one utilize the massive amount of cross-chain data? Well, the same problem happened in Web 1 and Web 2 before. So traveling back to the infancy of internet, before Google, before Facebook, all the sites, all the data on the internet are like islands without bridges. The introduction of querying and indexing revolutionized the landscape. So now people do not have to rely on the words of mouth, but can also start accessing data by using keywords and indicators in a search engine. So the introduction of this becomes the catalyst of today's internet. So now people can access limitless knowledge at the click of a button. So now let me introduce you KILT. So our team of engineers from Google and Apple has created a totally decentralized and permissionless protocol that scours data across the chain and returns querying results instantly based on the indicators you entered into our automated matching engine. There are a lot of user cases. So for example, today, how are you going to create a new game for Bored Ape Yacht Club owners, right? You want to create a yacht battlefield game, for example. There's no way for you to do that. But with our tool, with KILT, you're able to use our indexing tool to figure out what kind of addresses, over 50,000 addresses owns Ape today, and start and launch an airdrop campaign instantly. Also, the indexing tool helped you block all the bots and unqualified users from accessing. So KILT serves as a bridge to different projects and user communities. Well, besides indexing, our AME engine, together with a user recommendation tag system, are enabling projects to find new users based on their original users. So, for example, if your product currently have 100 addresses, you can input into AME, and the AME will output you 10,000 addresses that share the similar tags, which means they're likely to like your product as well. So comparing to the current solutions in the market, the Graph or Project Galaxy, we're obviously way more decentralized and way more permissionless. So the Graph takes an engineer team to even get your indexing campaign started. With KILT, you only need a marketing director who knows what target audiences you want to focus and what kind of rewards you want to give. So speaking of rewarding the early adopters, KILT uses a dynamic fee and reward structure, which means that if you are going on KILTDAO.com today to claim or to create your campaign, it's not only free, but we are also rewarding you KILT tokens, because we value your trust and we value your time and investment into the new platform. However, when the volume goes higher, one will need to start stake or start paying a little fee in KILT to access the platform and access the community and user base. So get on early is the way to go. And this is a video that of the demo for the campaign we created for you today. So this is a philanthropic campaign we created for you with lag, and Jay will introduce here a little. And with the indexing tool, you can see that we're targeting GMT users. So there are currently 53,000 GMT users on chain, across chain, and there are over 40,000 addresses owns over 10 apes. So with the all and the any button, you can choose what criteria you want it needs to fit. It's either need to fit both criteria for all or any. It just needs to fit one criteria. So we ended up choosing addresses which owns 1 GMT, and with a scroll bar, you can choose how many addresses you want to target. And with one click of a button, your smart contract is live. So easily deployed and instantly able to use. So if you check KILTDAO.com right now, you are able to see the campaign and go claim it. We launched this campaign with the founder of LAG, Jay, and let Jay.
this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rudy, for hosting, and it's a pleasure to be here with KILT. My name is Jalin. I grew up in Zimbabwe through 2005 and 2012, and African inflation, how hurting African people has really burned into my memories and experiences. And it's my pleasure that we want to help Africans with the currency resolutions that blockchain is providing, but we also want to provide a little helps along the way. That's why we and KILT will be presenting claim to give. So for every $1 worth of GMT that you claim with us, we'll be donating $1 to Hulana Matata, which is an African-based charity organization. And with that money, it will be donated through educational program and put kids in Africa for 1 year of education. And thank you very much for presenting this opportunity with me and KILT. Thank you guys so much.
So yes, with every 50 claims, we are able to support one orphan in Africa for 1 year education. And scan the QR code right now. You can participate in the claim for free, and it's free of charge. So anyone who get on to claim the campaign can get 2 to 5 GMT, and we're going to donate $1 to this foundation. Also, we have a party on the 11th called Elysian on the JW Marriott. So anyone can get on Elysian at KILT.com to register and get a free pass. The free pass is around $2,000, and anyone who holds a pass can claim the GMT free airdrop as well. Thank you.
There's so much talk about how crypto can positively impact our lives today. But it's nice to see partnerships where we're actually seeing people positively affecting the world through adoption of cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies, and everything in between. So how beautiful. Let's give a round of applause for just providing value for those who are in need. So when it comes to blockchain technology, and when it comes to Bianca Star, I have a bunch of what I call Bianca-isms. And this is one of my primary one. I say the 3 most valuable currencies are as follow. Number 3, financial currency, monetary currency, things you transact in, fiat, Bitcoin, all of that good stuff. Number 2, social currencies. Your relationships, how you leverage them, how you network, how you utilize them to your benefit. And number 1, the most valuable currency in the world that you, yes, can transact in, yes, is tangible in a way that is tangible, privacy. Privacy is extremely important, and privacy is at the forefront and at the heart of blockchain technologies and everything that we are creating in Web3. That being said, in the crypto community, there is a phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. Well, our next speaker has a play on that phrase. So please join me in welcoming to stage the representative from Jackal, Patrick Dunlop.
Can you hear me okay? Perfect. So my name is Patrick. I'm one of the co-founders of Jackal. And what Jackal does is we build digital privacy infrastructure and also cybersecurity solutions. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the current state of the internet and what we think we can do to help. So right now if you look up there, it's the usual suspects that we're all accustomed to. So there's about 7 companies that have consolidated power over the internet. They have a price monopoly on data storage. They also control the flow of information. When you have centralized infrastructure like this, you also have really high security vulnerabilities. A lot of my team, our backgrounds, we come from digital forensics. We also come from digital investigations for law firms, corporations. And when the largest platforms right now, they're not open source. They don't develop how they train their algorithms. They don't share often how they disclose and leverage your data. They also don't share how they secure your data. And most importantly, they don't share how they control the flow of information. So they all have very similar business models, and they all prioritize user engagement and growth. They race for the intention marketplace, and they also mine your data and sell it for profit. When you have a business model like this, often these 3 points trump the ethics of the software that's being built, and they also release invisible harms to society. What harms, you ask? If you scan this QR code right now, it'll take you to the Center of Humane Technology, and they can talk about all the different things that are occurring, and how we know that these specific issues and these harms to society are occurring is when you ask the tech leaders themselves, they say things like, I don't use that shit, or they say other things like dopamine-driven feedback loops have created a serious issue, and they're also destroying how society works. That would be the former VP of Facebook. So right now when you have centralized infrastructure like this, you also have centralized choke points of failure that can be really dangerous. And right now they're also being leveraged for different use cases, whether that be military, whether that be government, whether to control populations or as a military tool. Between 2005 and 2021, there's been a total of 469 total government-imposed internet shutdowns, which are a violation of the human rights according to the United Nations. And the longest shutdown in history is currently ongoing between June 19th, 2019 to now in the Myanmar military coup. So when you have all these centralized choke points of failure, you also have really bad cybersecurity vulnerabilities when your data is free-flowing and you don't really have good controls. There's about 14 billion compromised assets out there. There's countless attack vectors, that is emails, passwords, phone numbers, usernames. And it seems like every other day when you look at the news, you'll see XYZ company has been hit with another cyber attack and all this information has been dumped online. What does that mean necessarily? That means that all these different attack vectors that are personal to users, personal to organizations, are shared in plain text, often on the open internet. So I decided to bring a little bit of black hat to DCENTRAL, and when I first got here, I took the public-facing email address of the chief of police for Austin, and if you notice and you cross-reference that with 14 billion compromised assets, you get his username. If you take his username and then you again cross-reference that with the 14 billion different compromised assets, you get his non-public facing email, and you also get his password. Situations like this occur every single day. My background is I would work in things like this for law firms, and we would secure organizations. And something specific, we wonder why we have a really big ransomware problem right now, and reasons like this exist. So this is also a Web3 problem. Right now, every single DApp, they leverage centralized storage layers. They also leverage centralized middleware. When you have that, you have the same attack vectors. You have your data is mined and sold for profit by these organizations. You have censorship issues, and you have no privacy. Also, when Amazon goes down, you'll also notice that all of Web3 weirdly goes down as well. So how can we help? We can help secure the storage layer. We can help with the flow of information with the highest digital privacy and cybersecurity posture available on market right now. We can obsess over ethical and humane core values. We can also put the power back in the user's hands. We leverage all kinds of different protocols to get this to occur, and we've kind of created a big web of protocols that we're leveraging to create this peer-to-peer network of decentralized nodes. If you think about it this way, it's kind of if you took the Tor browser, took BitTorrent and Cosmos smart contracts, you mix them together, that's what Jackal is essentially. So in the development pipeline right now, we have the Shepherd Web Gateway, we have the Retriever name service, we also have Jackal Storage, which is the flagship product. A Retriever name service is a name service that was launched, it's on mainnet right now. If you purchase it, it auto-resolves to 14 different Cosmos chains. But most importantly, and the reason why we built it, you can send data between two human readable names that kind of increases that ease of use and user experience. Shepherd Web Gateway, what that does is you can host static websites right now. And with Jackal Storage, it has the highest digital privacy and cybersecurity posture available on market, where only the end user with their private key can access and share their data. We're open source, and additionally, we can't access your data. We're locked out from the ground up. It's like your own personal SSD in the cloud, really. So we follow the Amazon S3 standard. I know Amazon's a trigger word for a lot of you, but it's just a standard that we follow to hook into a lot of enterprise clients, for example. We bring speed, utility, privacy by default. We're fully decentralized with the highest digital privacy, cybersecurity posture available. All of our users get to own their own data, and that's something that's true to the core of our ethos, our vision. And when you own your own data, you're empowered, and you can also sell your own data if you want to sell your own data, but we won't be doing it on your behalf because we are locked out. If you're not really into the security of the whole thing, it's also 50% cheaper than legacy solutions as well. So this is the business to customer product. If you take a look at it, it's really just like a decentralized Dropbox. You drag and drop your files, it gets encrypted in your browser. If you want really high security, you can air gap your computer as well. And then you can push the files to our chain, and we think it's beautiful. So if you want to nerd out on some infrastructure right now, this is how the product works. So when you take a file and you drag and drop it into the client, it gets instantly encrypted from your web browser. At that point, you get a key request and a key result to a blockchain being the secret network. The reason we're on the secret network is it's the only chain with programmable privacy in the metadata. What this gives us the ability to do is we can have all the information needed in the blockchain where only the end user with their private key can access it and share it with an isolated JavaScript client that collects zero data. Once you get that key request and key result, you'll realize that the client will say, okay, this user importantly is paid. And then also it'll tell you that this is where you store the location of the file afterwards. At that time, you pay a little bit gas and then you push the file to our peer-to-peer network of decentralized nodes. What our decentralized nodes do is it's a caching layer that brings that speed utility that you're used to when you have Web 2 technology, that you're kind of used to that speed and utility. It gets copied for redundancy, and then after that, we're stored on the Filecoin network. The only way to encrypt and decrypt that file again is associated with the metadata in your secret network smart contract. Once it's stored, the location of the file is sent back to the client, and then it stores it right in that smart contract. Perfect. Okay, retrieving a file, same thing but backwards. So you get a key request and a key result from the secret network. At that time, it tells the client, hey, this is the CID of the file you got to go find. The client will tell the peer-to-peer network of decentralized nodes, say, okay, go find this file. It'll retrieve the file and send it back to the user. Once it gets back in your client, you get a key request, key result, and then you can decrypt your file. We also want Jackal to be a great asset to own as well, because we want a secondary market for people to hold the token with 6 different revenue streams, 8 different forms of utility, so that we have a secondary market of people that want to purchase it as an asset and reduce the miners just dumping on the entire network and no one wanting the token. So we needed to make sure that it's a great asset to hold as well. If you want to get in touch with us, you can scan the QR code and you'll see our link tree, all of our stuff. You can follow us on Twitter, go to the website, or we're upstairs. If you have any questions, please come by the booth and we would love to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me, and stay safe out there.
Privacy, so important. #1 currency, Biancaism. We love all projects being built on Secret Network. They are one of our sponsors and we really appreciate them. They are a network after my own heart, specializing in that privacy, keeping what you want secret, secret. As we transition and we start to think, how can we build this thing called the metaverse? And what actually is a metaverse? We've had people and panels cross this stage talking about the metaverse and what can be built, talking about the fact that maybe the metaverse isn't just one thing, maybe there's many different metaverses that come together. Maybe these metaverses plug in on like an electric cord and this section is for these metaverses to plug in and this section is for these to plug in. We're in a creation and building process, and that's why panels like you're going to see right now are so vital and so important to gather that information and for you as a creator or you as a builder to utilize to the highest and best. So with that being said, let me introduce to a stage the moderator for our panel, Miss Leah Colin Butler.
Is this on? Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you for that amazing introduction. My name's Leah, and I'm the director of METAVERSES, which is an advisory investment firm. We're focused on social impact using Web3 technologies. I also write for CoinDesk. I've had an opinion column on their website for a few years, mainly looking at how blockchain is being adopted across Southeast Asia. And I'm also usually based in the Philippines, so I'm not sure if anyone here has seen the Play to Earn documentary about the rise of NFT gaming in the Philippines, but I was the writer and narrator of that little mini film. So check it out on YouTube if you haven't seen it. It's called Play to Earn. We're going to talk about that today because back when I first started researching the rise of Axie Infinity in the Philippines, this was mid-2020. The pandemic was in full force. Everyone was in lockdown. And the idea of being able to escape to a virtual world when people were stuck in their own homes was a very exciting prospect. And we saw that adoption really take off throughout 2021. But I think the topic has actually attracted a lot of criticism since then. There's been a lot of pushback against NFTs in general, but also the aesthetic of these virtual worlds, the usability, the access, and so on. So we're going to chat about that today. Carmelo, Rob, Alex, do you want to come out and join me on stage? Give them a round of applause, come on. Hey guys, I've just talked about myself for way too long, so how about you introduce yourselves too?
I'll go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, my name is Rob Clark. I work for a company called Reality Gaming, and we produce, well, we started off producing a game called Reality Clash, which was a NFT AR game in the really dawn of NFTs, really, in about 2017. And we moved on then to starting to produce a game called Worlds Apart, which is a Doctor Who licensed crypto game. It's like a trading card game. Falls between Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering in terms of complexity. And we're now working with a lot of different brands that have seen Doctor Who and are trying to work out a way to enter the space, whether it's through Metaverse, whether it's through some sort of Web3 project online only, or whether it's through an actual game, which is obviously the big, scary one for people to sort of get into. So we work with those companies and we try to fit their ideals into this new space.
Hi, my name is Carmelo Milian. I'm the CEO of Polka City. Polka City is a metaverse with its own full economy where everything that you see in it is an NFT. You know, the cars, the gas stations, the planes, boats, everything in the city is owned by our community, and they play and they make money in an economy.
Hey guys, and I'm Alex Nace. I'm not Tracy. Different picture. I know, right? I run a very high quality metaverse called TCG World. We've been building quite a bit under the radar for the last like 10, 11 months. And now we are showing what we've been building to the entire world, like literally just starting this last month. So we got a demo here. It's at a booth. It's fully built out everything. And we're all about very high quality graphics, gameplay. We believe a metaverse should be where people have fun going into, but after experience it, they want to come back and they want to continue to do fun things. And so you'll get to see a little bit about what I'm talking about. And as we go through the questions, I can talk a little bit more. But yeah, my name's Alex Nace, and then TCG World is our metaverse upstairs.
Love it. Thanks, guys. So I want to get this one out of the way. How do we feel about the term metaverse anyway? Do we have a definition for it, or is it just like another one of those overused buzzwords like innovation or decentralization that people are just using over and over again? Because the concept of a metaverse has been around for a really long time. This isn't really new. So what is new about it now? Who wants to tackle that?
Well, all right, so I mean, the metaverse started like a buzzword, right? And I mean, for example, Polka City is over a year old now since we started developing it, and we were doing this before everybody was calling it a metaverse, right? And I remember doing some type of VR probably like 20 years ago. when I was working for Microsoft, we play with all that technology. So the metaverse is nothing new. AR is nothing new. The first AR was built in 1968 by a guy in Harvard. So this is technology that we've been putting together all these years, and now somebody comes and says it's the metaverse. And so the metaverse is nothing new. It's something that is going to keep evolving, and it's not just another website. Like many people are even building websites and calling them metaverses. That's the thing. It's kind of a buzzword for all the new technology we have laying around.
Yeah, and it's such a good question because that's really what is the metaverse? There's a lot of you ask 20,000 different people what their definition is of the metaverse, you're going to get 20,000 different answers. And so in Alex Nace opinion only, so not the opinion of Wikipedia or anybody else, I believe a full dramatized, interactive, immersive, virtual living world is kind of what I envision the metaverse to be. So a place that you can work, a place that you can socialize, a place that you can go play games and go hang out with grandma who lives on the West Coast and go do an escape room together or watch a movie together or host your business or host education and all sorts of different industries existing in this world. So it's not just a one game thing. It's all sorts of different industries. So I kind of like to think of it as at least with us, a very high quality train station. And through it are all these different rails or all these different industries, education, music, entertainment, school, philanthropy, charity, all these different rails kind of coming through this one awesome platform. Is kind of what I envision the metaverse to be. I think a good example, has anyone seen the movie Ready Player One or read the book? Show of hands, just out of curiosity, if you've seen Ready Player One. So that's kind of what I think is a good example of where it could go, but it definitely is a word that is thrown around loosely. And some projects are yeah, we're a metaverse. And I look at it, it's so yeah, my definition definitely is a little bit different than others on it, but that's kind of what I envision it to be.
I feel like Rob's going to have a different take on this again.
Go for it.
But I was going to say, personally, I agree the Ready Player One thing, right? And that's the dream to have that full haptic feedback VR vision, right? And so when we talk about the metaverse, if you're talking about what it is right now and what it could be, those are two very different conversations. When we talk to brands, they don't really know, right? They come to us and they say, okay, we need to do Web3, we want to do a metaverse, and we say, okay, what do you want to do? And then they tell us, and we go, okay, well, we could work with Sandbox, or we could work with TCG, right? We can work with these guys, and we can produce something for you within those existing platforms. And they go, what? We have to share? Are other competitors and brands going to be on those platforms? Why would we do that? And then you have to explain sort of what do you want? Yes, we can make you a metaverse with a 3D world in a space. It's going to be just this isolated island of something. And maybe if you're just BMW and you want to just be able to show people, for example, how a car looks on the inside on your website, cool. You want to call that a metaverse? Call it a metaverse, But the real ideal for us in this room, I would imagine for most of us, is to have these businesses learn and educate them on the power of interoperability. And you have to do that at a very senior level sometimes. And it's something that takes time. We're able to use the word interoperability now without people staring at us confused. So I think we're getting somewhere, because last year that was not the case at all.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. When we bring customers and companies to the metaverse, we got to tell them you want to join the metaverse, not we're going to create a metaverse. I know of a huge bank that was like, oh, metaverse, we got to go to metaverse. So they hire a whole bunch of developers for a bank, and they got their metaverse. So what you doing with that? You're not interacting with other metaverses. You're not you're not getting new customers. You're just giving a 3D game to your customers, right? So that brings me to another thing. I believe that a true metaverse has to integrate with other metaverses. If you have just your metaverse and it's just your 3D world and you're bringing customers there and nobody can come in, this is my place, then that's not a metaverse. That's just a 3D game.
I hear you loud and clear. I have a question that might sound a bit non-Web3, but hear me out. I want to talk about aesthetics because at the moment, like you mentioned the sandbox, which I'm a huge fan of, but you know, it gets a lot of criticism because it's pixelated. Our PFPs on Twitter, they're all cartoons. I'm wondering, you know, do you think this aesthetic is going to endure in metaverses, or are we going to start to see more sophisticated graphics? Likewise, you know, I think there's still a tendency to be kind of skeuomorphic. That is, all the things that we have in digital worlds, they kind of resemble what is in the real world. Like, we might not be really kind of figuring out what we can really do in terms of the full potential of these worlds. So I want to talk about aesthetics, but I'm thinking, you know, maybe the Web3 community can actually kind of weigh in on that because we have these new elements of ownership and the creator economy to kind of build it. Like, what do you guys think about this? Where is it going? Are we just like super early now?
Well, I mean, so that's kind of us, right? So we're all about like 4K, high quality. Look, I believe people, like businesses, celebrities, users, like people want to be in something high quality, right? Like that's you, that's your brand, right? I can't imagine like a company like Nike being in a metaverse where you can't even make out their logo because of like low quality. So I think aesthetics really are an important thing, but it's also a balance because I've met with some other upcoming metaverse projects. Like we've been in development for a year, but I've met with some other projects that are just kind of starting out, and they're trying to go like hyper realism, like hyper realism. Like you can see like arm hair and like sweat glands and stuff. And although it looks cool, you also have to build something that is for your customer base, right? Like the average user like doesn't have a crazy graphics card. Like if people that know graphics card, I'd say like average people have like a 960 or a 1060 like graphics card. So you don't want to build something that is going to be outrageously expensive. And you want to make it so that it looks good, but it also has different styles of play. Like VR looks really cool, but it's hard to play VR for like multiple hours. Like I can't play VR for 8 hours. I don't know if everybody else is like I start to get a headache. So you want it to be available for the masses. You want it to make it look good. But the most important thing out of all of it, it doesn't matter how good your metaverse looks. If the multiplayer is clunky and it's a bad user experience, people aren't going to want to go back. So while other companies are so hyper-focused on graphics and making it look awesome, they need to also be with the same amount of passion over the user experience. It has to be fun, and you can't have all these bugs and clunky, laggy multiplayer, because that's not something you want to go back to. So it needs to be that strong balance. And sometimes people hyper-focus on one over the other. I think it should be like both. Focus on making it look good, but also that it plays good.
I agree with him 100% that too. If I wanted pixelation in my gaming, I'll dust off my Atari and connect it again. so I believe that the experience, if we're talking about the metaverse and with a nice creation of these avatars, that our avatars actually look like ourselves, right? You take a picture and you can have your avatar look like yourself, you dress it like yourself. You can sign its identity so that you can make sure that nobody steals your avatar and that kind of thing, right? So the quality is it needs to be so good that the immersion makes you confuses you where you are, you know, and especially since the technology is catching up, because the problem was, I mean, these headsets, they were terrible, you know. Now the Oculus 2, I mean, at least, right? And this expensive headsets, but that's the problem. If you create the highest quality available to create right now, it's not going to run in your headset. So you need to either do these inversions. What we're doing at Polka City is, so we don't do mobile yet because the quality that we have is too high for mobile. It's just desktop, PC, and Macs. But we are doing subsets of the metaverse, different gamifications that are going to go to mobiles. People are going to be able to trade their NFTs in mobile apps and everything, but it is connected to the metaverse. So when they go to the metaverse, they bring in all their NFTs, all their cars, all their clothing, everything there. So, I mean, the idea, the goal of the metaverse should be an experience. It's an entire experience that it will encompass. Yes, we're going to be VR. Yes, we're going to be in the mobiles. Yes, we're going to be in the PC, in the desktops. We have to leverage all the technology to deliver the experience.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you guys on that. And the accessibility thing is a big thing when we talk to brands, right? So if you go outside and you watch people at lunchtime, and like, we're an entrepreneurial and a sort of industry, right? And everyone's got a top of the line MacBook Pro or an Alienware laptop. And that's what they're using these metaverses on. But when we talk to broad brands that want to see this, like really, really broad audiences that wouldn't know what a metaverse is, probably still haven't heard the term. We're talking about, as you say, people with integrated Intel graphics cards on their laptops, and it needs to work for that, which is maybe, I don't think that was the deliberate reason why our current metaverses are voxel and pixel based. I think that's more to do with how quickly you can get that stuff out versus higher, not higher quality, but a more like high resolution world. And the other thing is how much it costs businesses to then produce those assets, and how many of those businesses are able to be convinced that, say you do, we use the Nike example, how if you're going to enter 3 or 4 metaverses that are all vastly different in terms of the resolution and the style, then for each asset that you produce for each pair of shoes, you need to do 4 times the amount of work on them. And so you have to work out if all 4 of those are sort of super hyper realistic, that's going to have a cost to it more than if all 4 of them are sort of very low resolution pixel versions of those things. But the low resolution pixel versions can end up taking longer because of the fun world of licensing and going through a long process where, like you say, if the logo that was a 2000 by 2000 resolution picture is now a 20 by 20 block, getting that through to a big corporation and saying, well, this is what your logo looks like now, is very, very hard.
While you were saying that, I was picturing my head in the metaverse and pixelated, and goes like, you see my Nikes? And you're like, you sure those are Nikes? Are you sure? They don't look real to me.
That idea too of, in terms of like, how do we translate these images into these different worlds is hugely important. But I also think the concept of ownership is cool, right? So like, if you're wearing your Nike shoes in the metaverse, you want to be able to prove that they're yours, that they're legit, you know. I think that's one of the biggest things, and I'm sure everybody here in this audience, I don't need to preach to you, we get it, we get the concept of digital property rights. And that is, to me, you know, one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, that we're seeing in these new open, interoperable metaverses that we're imagining. However, it still feels like such a difficult concept to explain to people who haven't been like banging on the Bitcoin drum for years, you know, like they're not that worried about self-sovereignty or, you know, whether I actually own my digital assets. A lot of people are kind of going, you know, how can virtual land possibly be scarce, for example? And they don't really understand the need to own an NFT. It's like right click and save, right? So my question is, how important is this? Like, are we actually going to see, heaven forbid, Roblox, Meta prevail here, and people are going to, you know, enjoy metaverses but never actually own their digital assets? I mean, how big is this fight?
Well, the funny thing about this like whole ownership conversation for us, and like what do people care? I think the answer that we've had to solve that a little bit with Doctor Who, right? But I think as an industry, we are almost getting too obsessed with that as the only thing to focus on, right? Like, we have ownership is super important, but just pushing, hey, you own your assets, that's not a feature. That to me is like selling a video game by saying, okay, this is made in Unity. And no one cares. No one cares except you. You know, your developers, your business, the engine is really important. Your consumers don't care. And we've noticed that, like, working on Doctor Who for the last few years. So what we do is we don't talk about ownership on our website. We talk about the features behind the ownership, right? Which for us is the obvious one is money. It's being able to trade cards like you trade Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and Magic cards, and you own them there. And then you can make money if you get a rare one. If you've got duplicates, you can trade them. Those are features. The technology, like, we're trying to move away from using the term NFTs, although it's powered by NFTs, right? It doesn't matter. And if you want to reach an audience outside of the crypto audience, which is growing, but reasonably still very small compared to the broad mainstream audience for a free-to-play game, you've got to like put the tech on the back a little bit, I think, and start focusing on features.
I was just going to quickly add to that. Like, I feel gamers get it. I've heard so many horror stories of people who have poured like tens of thousands of hours into a game, you know, winning cool assets or, you know, creating an amazing skin, and then the game's discontinued. Or for whatever reason, like I heard one that someone was playing a game in Hong Kong and they moved to the US and you couldn't actually access it when you're in a different country. And, you know, that's like a part of you, part of your identity. And being able to actually own those assets, so you can kind of port them around with you and be more part of your life, could be a huge use case as well.
Well, just to add on, like I agree with Rob. I think a lot of people are very hyper-focused on the ownership, the security and stuff, because that's a lot of like in the metaverse space right now. Like, okay, yes, you can buy and sell land. Yes, you can buy and sell NFTs. And so that's kind of the thing that everyone's like worried about, are those two things, like making sure it's authentic, making sure that all that. I think the next phase in the metaverse industry is kind of the thing that people have been waiting for, where it's not about it's about revolutionizing industries. It's about changing the way that economies operate and people get educated and businesses interact with people and we interact with each other. And so, like, if done right, which fingers crossed and will of God and all that, if done right, like, I believe we're going to start moving away from being a product or being a metaverse. I actually see this as being like a societal movement, like something that actually could change and elevate not just one industry or one rail at the train station, but revolutionize all industries and elevate them in a very special way, if done right. And so that's kind of where I see this next phase or level or upgrade, I guess you could call, of the metaverses. That's where things are kind of moving towards, where lives are actually going to be impacted on a global scale, which is freaking exciting.
I'm going to give you an example of how we're doing this, and in terms of ownership of NFTs, right? So we've been selling in Polka City land. We sold land twice. Every time that we sell land, it sells out in hours, and people fight because they couldn't buy it. But what we're doing is, I went to El Salvador a couple of months ago. I met with Bukele, and I met with the ambassador, and we started talking about things that we're going to be doing there. So, you know, there's about building Bitcoin City. So Polka City, it has acquired a few acres in Bitcoin City, which we're building some land and houses, real land and real houses. And when you buy your land and your house in Polka City in the metaverse, it's going to actually include real property in Bitcoin City. So when you buy it, hey, I have this NFT, I just buy it. Oh, really? When you go to El Salvador, you have a house with a key. And in the same way that we're doing this, since we're selling NFTs, that land, every time that keeps reselling and passing hands, is always going to be sold through Polka City, and the owner, original owner of the land, is always going to get royalties. So what we're doing is, if you have land or building a community that you want to sell in the real world, what do you rather do? Give it to a real estate company and a developer that is going to buy it from you once, or you rather build it so that it can be sold as NFTs in the metaverse and keep earning forever in the royalties of that land movement? So we're doing that before the end of the year. We should be already selling that land in El Salvador.
I love these projects that are really kind of blurring the lines between what is the physical world, which I always say physical, not real world. You know, people say real world. I'm like, it's all real. It's your version of reality. Yeah. So it's like the blurring of the physical and the virtual worlds, I think, is super cool. And we're probably going to see more of that, like, rather than say just a Ready Player One fully immersive metaverse. I think like more how we can actually blend our lives. I mean, this is all great. We've kind of been saying how awesome this is, but I just want to dig into something that was mentioned before around accessibility. You know, how do we actually make sure that these metaverses are inclusive? I think we hear a lot of narratives about, you know, I live in the Philippines, and we've heard about how people in the Philippines can kind of smash traditional geographic boundaries to be able to participate in this global decentralized economy. But how do we make sure that we are actually creating, you know, a wonderful brand new world that we want to live in, and not just replicating the same old structures of the past?
That's a great question.
Take it away,
Carmelo. I think the way to do this, and it brings me to another thing, is if we're building these metaverses, we got to be responsible. We have to take responsibility. I mean, it's not all good. It's not all nice and pink. I'm telling you, 10 years from now, there's going to be new mental health problems because of the metaverse. There's going to be people who they're going to take their headsets out, and they're going to find out that they don't have the same girlfriend as in the metaverse, the same car as in the metaverse, and they live on their parents' garage. And that's going to be depressing. So I mean, that's going to be happening. So when we're building these experiences, we have to be responsible. We cannot have 10-year-old kids with a headset for 12 hours. You know, we have to work around that too. It's not just build, and sell, and make money. We have to take responsibility.
Well, and I can also kind of see the other side of the coin on that one. Like, I can see like the positive impacts of these like specific examples, like talking like so we're working with a couple of kid organizations because we don't have adult entertainment pornography. Like, we're kid friendly because we're working with some kid organizations for education. And because they're finding that kids these days are learning more through gamification than they are sitting at a desk for, 10 hours a day. I'm the same way. I learn more through gamification and stuff. So like, here's a way to kind of revolutionize that industry and bring, like, I got a 6-year-old kid and he learns so fast coding and everything on his iPad more than I do at the moment. Like, they learn so fast. And even with like self-help, like I do see like people taking things out of moderation and getting too much into it. But then take the other side of the coin with self-help. Like, what if there was a metaverse place where people can go get self-help? Like, I don't have to leave my house. I don't have to go find an office that has a time and go drive somewhere and go meet somebody in an office. Like, what if I can go into a world and there's like a nice river, there's like birds, like it's a really like conducive environment, and I can get help with like mental addiction or depression or things that I'm really struggling with. I don't even have to dox myself. Like, I don't even have to show my face if I don't want to. I can go and get help in the world from an expert. They may not even live in my local area. Maybe there's somebody that is just this renowned person on the West Coast or the East Coast. Now I can go visit them and get help in an anonymous way if I wanted to. And then like self-building and learning leadership and self-help and all that kind of stuff too is so, there's another whole option for that now in the metaverse where it can actually really help a lot of people. And same with the therapist, like they can do it from their house too. They don't have to go travel and set up and all that stuff.
So are you saying that I'm going to go to the metaverse to get therapy for metaverse addiction?
Yeah, exactly. There'll be a special therapist for that. Yes.
On the broad like accessibility problems, like I think it comes down to making sure you have a diverse staff building these things. Like hire less white guys, hire more people of diverse backgrounds. I think COVID has helped. If there's one thing that COVID has done, it has pushed us to remote work. And as an industry, we have already cracked that problem. We don't want to take 20 years to hire our first woman, like the games industry did, like to bring people in and to make people feel wanted in those spaces. Which
Well,
is
sometimes
difficult.
even with DAOs, for example, like the creation of DAOs and people just being able to come along and, put themselves forward, they're kind of, they're contributing based on their skill set, not, what they look like or where they're from or their socioeconomic status.
Yeah, and that helps when we bring people up from our communities, which we often do, right? You find talented people that become moderators, that become community leads through Discord. That's never really happened before. Like that wasn't happening in games, and now it's happening for the first time to take people and bring them in. As an industry, we're doing that well, and I think that over time will lead to a more diverse thing. And the remote working just allows different people from all over the world to collaborate and to have the time. If you've got kids, if you need to take time and do stuff on a different schedule, that's possible. So we just need to focus on those benefits, make sure they're clear. And
And just to add on to that, because that's such a good point, like now you have people all over the world, like they can get education that they couldn't get education in the world. And then also like having an economy that's based off of global pricing, not local pricing, So now you got these people who are in these second, third world countries who are making like 10 to 20 cents like a day, like right now, and they're having to like sell themselves to brothels and stuff just to provide for their family. Like now they can make 10, 20, $50 a day. And like, it's like changing money because it's not based on their local price, it's global price.
Alex, I could listen to you all day. I'm really sorry. We're going to have to wrap it up. They're going to start playing the music in a sec. We've gone way over time. This is amazing, though. The big takeaway I took was that this is a tool. It can be used for good or bad, and we need to make conscious decisions in terms of how we build this metaverse. So I'm feeling very, very optimistic having listened to you guys. Thank you for an amazing panel.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Amazing insights about the metaverse. I love the diversity of thoughts that we see on this stage about what a metaverse can be and what it could be, what it can be. I like the idea of blurring the lines. A lot of people in this industry obviously are crypto natives. They know the terminology. They understand ERC 720 token and what that means, right? They get it. But there's so many people who need to onboard who maybe that terminology isn't even important. And so I love the idea of how do we glorify the use cases and the functionalities of this technology, but not necessarily have to use convoluted language if it's not necessary. When it comes to building the metaverse, everyone's going to be a part of it in the future if we're not already a part of it, if we're not already living in the metaverse, right? So we need to use language and we need to blur those lines. So incredible panel. Thank you so much again, panelists. Here at Decentral Con, we are not just about education, we're about entertainment as well. Edutainment, as we like to call it. We have a mechanical bull outside that you could ride and potentially win 1 ETH. That's a good payback for having a good time. We have food trucks. We have a musical performance, I heard, on this stage closing out our Decentral conference. So we're all about entertainment and we're all about a diversity, right? We have me up here presenting. When do you ever see a presenter at conferences? But we're doing something different. We're bringing something fresh and flavorful. That's why I'm so excited to introduce our next fireside chat, because it's fresh and flavorful. We're seeing adoption from celebrities. We're seeing adoption from athletes. And so I am so excited to be able to introduce to the stage our athlete extraordinaire, NBA professional, Baron Davis and Jordan French for their fireside chat. Please welcome them to the stage with a round of applause.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Big round of applause for Bianca, our lovely MC. She'll never get enough praise for all that she does. One hell of an intro for us. Right, Baron?
Yes, we selling products. I feel like we're about to do like a motivational speech.
I feel this way. or it's a comic skit. Is about that? We're still standing. We should take a seat.
Thank you.
As to be considerate. Let's grab these two, kind of like nice and center. Actually, let me move you right here. Best optics for that camera. I'm seeing them right down the middle. Acknowledgement. Big round of applause for Decentral and the team out back. Michael, Justin, Esther, the phenoms that they are. You'll better check out Miami later this year. I'll go. I was there last year. It's a great time. In December, for the uninitiated, Decentral Miami. Speaking of what Bianca, I'm going to pick up on a word she mentioned. You heard it a lot. Metaverse. Haven't heard lobster much, but that's going to come up about metaverse, and we're going to unpack some of that for you. Let me open this up for the uninitiated on you, Baron. NBA star turned entrepreneur. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is cool. Happy to be here. Shout out to Decentral Con, and I'm ready to get cracking.
And you teased some news to us on Twitter. We were all paying attention. And it was about some of the work that you're doing. What's even better, as I like to say, picture's worth 1,000 words. We've heard that one, but video is worth 10,000. So we got a short video reel. I'm gonna make sure they make eye contact with us so they can play it. That way we can talk about it during this talk. It's about some of the work that you're doing. Gents, Ooh, good timing. Get spacey right there.
Talk about it.
Safety. I mean,
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to History of the Game. Former NBA player. My goal, and I think my life mission, was to create a storytelling museum to honor some of the best basketball players that ever played that didn't get nominated into the Hall of Fame. And so for me, I believe that, every person, every player has a story, blood, sweat, and tears in the journey. And so what I wanted to do was create a museum where the players can nominate players in, where the players can nominate coaches, coaches can nominate coaches, pioneers, brands, right? Startup companies, and then also NFTs. Because if we're talking about Web3 and we're talking about, this inclusive, cohesive system, we should be able to collaborate with other NFTs for the players, and build a menu that they can pick from. And, thinking about this museum, we had to have games, we had to have gamification. And so building out an arcade allows us to create these prizes, right? Physical, digital, whether it's an NFT or a physical jersey, you'll be able to play these games in order to win and collect your prizes. So the more points you get, the more prizes you get. And then looking upstairs, our gallery, just thinking about how do we serve the community? How do we offer space to the community? And so what you're looking at is collaborations with other NFTs that we can do a collab pack, or we can give them display wall to tell their story. And then Slick is our company, Sports Lifestyle and Culture. And it's the first, live stream marketplace for creators. And so our goal was to basically build a streaming platform where you go into our environment, which is like a Grand Central Station, and you can be in a lounge, you can be, out at the basketball court. And then it gives the content and the talent on the other end an opportunity to have distribution to go direct to their audience. And then here's our Hennessy Lounge, which I was tweeting. We'll be launching that on draft day, June 23rd. You'll be able to get Hennessy Lounge access pass to be able to travel in the metaverse and see what we're doing. We'll be doing our own, draft recap show in the metaverse. And so what you're looking at is, the lounge that we will be releasing for the draft, and, a big draft party. And then this is George Gervin. We just honor legends. The goal was just honor legends. And, every legend gets his own locker room. Super fans get a locker in their locker room. And that gets you access to breakfast, interviews, Zooms, meet and greets at All-Star, playoff games, things like that. And so what we wanted to do, we wanted to bring the fans closer to the legends, closer to the game, closer to the pioneers, because if we're all sitting and sharing stories, everybody's going to have a different perspective, right? Or a different story that adds into, probably that one game. And so what History of the Game is, for me, it was something that I wanted to build for my peers, something I wanted to build for the players I grew up watching, and something that I feel we should be leaving behind for the generations to come.
That's awesome. We can cut it there. Thanks so much for airing that, because like I said, 10,000 words in every video. Really well timed, by the way. It's almost like we practiced your speech timing, but probably order of priorities here for all the media out there, just like me, just teeing this up. I mentioned Barron's tweet about the big reveal. It's a Hennessy Lounge. So for all those out there writing, doing your video, that's a thing to cover. Is a Hennessy Lounge that's coming.
It's called the Never Stop, Never Settle Society. And so that's the lounge, that's the vibe, the campaign that we'll be promoting and building out, you know, that first activation in our museum.
With the checkerboard floor, I mentioned earlier, it's getting some like sophisticate meets Tom Petty vibes. I like that a lot.
Yeah, the checker floor is based off of the legendary Black architect Paul Williams, who designed, you know, Frank Sinatra's house in Palm Springs, a bunch of houses in Beverly Hills, the Beverly Hills Hotel. But he was probably one of the most sophisticated designers because you couldn't put him in a box. And so, you know, a lot of this museum, right, and design in this museum is really, you know, curated so there are stories to be told, right? And artwork and design can come into the museum to further enhance it.
Yeah, certainly, and no pun intended on the box to which you refer, this being the metaverse. And so some inquiring minds out there, you know, want to know about what you're launching June 23rd, coming right up. My first thought is, though, looks like we can play, Baron, and this is a question, on that basketball court that people just watched a few minutes ago, right?
Yeah, you know, we're building, and so our thought was, you know, Web3 has to include, you know, in real life experiences, virtual experiences, and then VR, gaming, all of that. And so Web3 should be the most inclusive, and it should be experiential. And so for us, you know, every part of our museum, we want to be able to like duplicate that in a physical form. And the way we look at the museum is really like we want a database and archive all of the incredible assets and IP and license rights for players themselves. So then at some point, you know, we will have, you know, a much bigger library than the Hall of Fame.
And got to ask this one naturally, because I know all the Web3 nerds out there like me are thinking this. Can we get an anti-gravity suit and just play you out there? Because that's what we're going to need.
Yeah, I mean, we working on like volumetric, like building out volumetric studios, things like that. Just thinking about like how can we continue to make the experience as realistic as possible, right? And so, you know, I think it's more about just listening and learning in this space and not being too fast, right? And kind of just, I would say, build it environment by environment, right? Because as, you know, Web3 is continuing to evolve and continuing to grow, no matter what's happening right now, there's so many incredible minds that are building cool stuff. You know, we want to make sure that we're nimble enough to add partners. So that's the whole point.
Yeah, it makes sense. Look, we've had these conversations before, and we know from coverage we've done, it's almost limitless, right? It's only limited by your own imagination of what's possible in here. And so to ground this experience for people, because there's people out there, they want to go into this on the 23rd. What is the use case, right? Just to lay more foundation. The draft's coming up. People can enter the metaverse as like a lounge, for example.
Yeah, it's basically we're doing our own draft party. We're doing our own draft show. And we're going to be in New York physically. And so for our fans, our people that are out, you know, out in the public and NBA fans, we figure that they should have the same opportunity that we're experiencing in New York. And so that was the whole point of just building out the lounge and having a, you know, a draft party with Hennessy to honor the rookies and all the legends, but to also bring, you know, this Web3 audience into, you know, this NBA or this basketball ecosystem, you know, different, a little different than just like buying an NFT, right? It's like, okay, here's something that you can actually experience, right? And here are people there, here's content there. And, you know, even though for us, it's like the experience is like, we rather focus on the moments instead of like a one-off interchange where you can't really mobilize, you know, a lot of times the NFTs because they have no utilities, you know, especially in our sport. and in basketball. And so what we wanted to do was make sure that every time we had a drop, that drop would ultimately lead to something that you would get, you can experience, you know what I mean? Because that's, I mean, to me, that's what I would want to experience, you know, in Web3 and NFTs. And even as a fan of the game, it's like I want to go to one place where I can absorb all of the content around basketball as I possibly want.
Yeah, definitely. And to unpack that further, right, and lay even more foundation, the paradigm that a lot of us are in Web3 is, just to repeat it back to you, we've either bought or sold NFTs, and there's not a lot of utility yet. We all are thinking, well, what do you do next? Let's drop them into games. Let's do other things. And a lot of people have bought sports memorabilia NFTs, for example, from one of great company out there, Lindai is running OpenSea. It sounds like you're taking the game and turning it on its head and starting with the experience first.
Yeah, it's like this is an opportunity for like culture. You know, 3 years ago, everybody was talking about the artists and how they want to empower the artists. Today, they're not talking about that anymore. You know what I mean? Corporate is coming in, they're moving in. It's more about the tech is starting to become, you know, a bigger, broader ecosystem. But the artists, right, was the ones we were supposed to be protecting. The legacy people were the ones, for us, we wanted to be protecting. So if we stick to that, right, just protecting assets, protecting IP, right, and then engaging, right, because, you know, let's, for example, like George Gervin, right, San Antonio legend, you know, NBA Hall of Famer, one of the best basketball posters of all time, and I want one. You know what I mean? And people, you know, there's a lot of people who want that. And so why just give them a poster and an autograph when you can give them the poster, the autograph? And George Gervin would love to know who his super fans are, because he would want to share all of this knowledge and these stories that he's had that has been locked up because there's only a certain amount of slots on TV. There's only a certain amount of slots for commercials. And then there's only a certain amount of idle time that the NBA has when you're watching NBA games to produce and show who they are. So as the game evolves, 75 years in the league, we have to do a better job of making sure that we capture more and more and more and more stories of these guys because they're living legends.
Right, and to repeat this back to you, it's all about the relationship, and these are tools really that you're building for these creators, these artists, players in a case, who are in many form an artist in and of themselves, especially their own IP. That's for sure. To relate to more of their fans, to build a relationship with more of their fans. Did I get that right?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, just picking on the athlete, it's like the athlete is a hyphenate. The athlete has a best friend who's an incredible artist, you know, painters, things like that. So if you start to like pinpoint on the athlete, then the artist gets taken care of, the producer gets taken care of, whoever's animating it. And so to me, that's like the Web3 ecosystem is you 5 people get together to support George Gervin, take him, induct him into the metaverse, and then let him menu out, you know, the NFTs that he wants to be a part of. And so that will drive value for him. It drives value for the artist. It drives value for the people who are helping him operate it.
Sounds like hell of a tailgate's coming up in the lounge on the 23rd. Backstage, we talked a little bit about the other relationship, which can be to other brands, including one, for example, that's like DCENTRAL, which we're at. You know, it's ripe for a metaverse play. Can you give us a little bit of a preview? Maybe it's not right now, but a way that you could work with others like a DCENTRAL in the future to tie them in to your own metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our world is pretty, you know, it's pretty barren. Just kidding. And so I would say somewhere like a place like DCENTRAL.
I admit I did not see that coming. I did not actually see that one coming. Usually I'm the one hitting you with the puns.
You know?
I got a lobster roll coming for you.
But, you know, thinking about DCENTRAL and thinking about all the people here, it's like every time I go to conferences, it's like, you know, either you're overwhelmed, you're underwhelmed, you're overinformed, you're underinformed, you're overconnecting, you're underconnecting. And it's like, you know, we don't want to just be people showing up at events, passing through in traffic, you know. And I think for us, it's like, how do we create, you know, a space, right, in an environment where people can always tap in, right? Because it's one thing to give somebody card or like be texting and following up, but it's another thing to know that, hey, I can go to DCENTRAL, right? I can go tap in one of these offices or a workshop. It's like, why aren't we taking these panels and then extending them into workshops or building out town halls, right? Where we can all kind of congregate, learn from each other, work together. And for the people who couldn't be here, right? The people who are not physically here, I think, you know, building out an environment, right? It would give them the opportunity to, one, like, if you can't afford it, earn your way here, you know? I want to give a shout out to my driver because he just picked me up today and I dragged him in here. He cut me a deal for Uber. He cut me an Uber deal.
What's his name? What's his
Anthony.
Anthony. Big round of applause for Anthony.
Shout out to Anthony.
The driver, front row. We got a packed house here, Baron. And I'm going to mark it to Central on top of it. So Anthony, so glad you could be here. So glad to see him in the front row. Super fan, ready for the metaverse, ready for the lounge. And I'll mark it to Central on this note because you brought it up on the count. There's from numbers Justin supplied, over 10,000 were on one of the live streams.
Wow.
So no joke on the count. I don't know the numbers here, but to your point.
Yeah, it's a great community. You know, you all are building a great community here, and people are, you know, they're vibrant. You know, the Miami one was great. You know, just it got me juiced.
We got Anthony in the house.
We got Anthony, and like it to me, like Anthony was about to leave because he was my Uber driver, and I was like, no, come in, dude. You want to be a part of this? And so for me, it's like I always want to try and pull one or two people or invite them, you know, into a space where, you know, people are engaging, people want to help, people, you know, like this space and this community and what we're growing, we should pay close attention to it because we're really doing something positive. You know, outside of all the BS and, you know, the people who are in it for the wrong reasons, but, you know, people are here for a reason, to connect, to learn, to build things together and collaborate. And that's what Web3 is about.
Yeah, certainly. And we're down on our minute, but we'd be remiss, Baron, to not unpack this word that we keep using. There's probably some inquiring minds out there, curiosities about this word, the lobster. Why are these two talking about lobsters? Well, just as a segue and foundation, we found each other out in the food court. And the food's pretty good here. Just to start.
The food is great. This is the best conference with the best food. You know, usually the food's nasty at conferences.
Yeah, that's for damn right. At Grit Daily House, and there's my turn. Mark Merrill's here from Get Maine Lobster. We got lobster rolls. I know some of y'all are salivating for that. So stop by Grit Daily House. We'll be there. You should swing by. Anthony, you're more than welcome. We'll get you a front row seat there as well. I'm Jordan French, executive editor at Grit Daily News, based up in New York, and Block Telegraph as well. Big round of applause one more time for the Baron Davis.
You can follow us Twitter. It's more than us. Or I think it's morethanus.io. More Than Us NFTs on Instagram. That's our collective. And so just like History of the Game, it took a village. We have a bunch of really incredible designers, builders who are building their own projects. And so check us out on More Than Us, and we'll be happy to engage, collaborate, because that's where we're here.
Awesome. Draft date, June 23rd. History of the Game. One more big round of applause. Baron Davis, ladies and gentlemen. And Bianca, come back out here. Take it away. Thank you.
We love it. We don't do it small here at DCENTRAL. We make sure we get high hitters, not only in the crypto space, not only in the blockchain space, but in the athletic space. I've never tried to be an NBA player, but I'm sure it's very difficult. So kudos to him for not only focusing on that, but transitioning and bringing in new people into the crypto space, which is what we ultimately want, that adoption. I am so excited. I love NFTs. As I said previously, when I found NFT technology, the first thing I said is, I am an NFT. I call an NFT the tokenization of a unique digital asset. I think the use cases for NFTs goes beyond what we even currently have imagined. And our next presenter here is looking to gamify the experience of DeFi and NFTs, not only hitting one, but all three of the beautiful things that this blockchain revolution is offering us. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage the representative from DeFi Kingdoms, Dreamer himself. Woo!
Hello, everybody. I am Dreamer, president at Kingdom Studios, where we are developing DeFi Kingdoms. And as mentioned, DeFi Kingdoms is a protocol we launched last year where we are gamifying DeFi and NFTs, doing that in a number of different ways. Today, I'm going to start by recapping kind of what we've done over the last 10 months. And then we're going to go into what we've been working on, some recent releases and what's coming up. To start, behind me, you see 3 logos under DeFi Kingdoms. The first is Jewel. Jewel is our power token. It is our main token that we launched with on Harmony. Jewel is used for things like summoning new heroes into the realm. Next to it, you see Crystal. Crystal represents a power token on the Avalanche ecosystem, where we launched DFK Chain earlier this year and called it DeFi Kingdoms Blockchain. Our own blockchain, because when it comes to blockchain gaming, fees become very important. We need low fees. What better way to control them than to have our own blockchain? That last logo there represents DFK Chain. So we're going to start by going through our gamified roadmap. And I'm going to click a button here in a second. I hope that the screen moves. It's meant to be a video. Let's see how it goes. But the first thing you see up there at the top is like a gamified garden. You might ask yourself, what would the garden represent in DeFi? Well, when we launched, we started with a DEX, a decentralized exchange. And there are many concepts that are hard for people not currently involved in crypto and not currently farming in the overall like DEX world in terms of liquidity pool farming that don't understand a lot of the concepts. So we simplified it. Rather than an LP token, you get a seed. Rather than a decentralized exchange, it's a garden. You take the seed, plant it in the garden, it grows Jewel. And that is your overall incentive and reward for providing the liquidity. From there, we launched our proprietary hero NFTs. The heroes are meant to be the main character in the game. An NFT as a character that can gain experience, that can evolve, that can become stronger and more powerful is a great way to have the result of gameplay carry and store and build value to be traded with others down the line as we build this gamified ecosystem. Initially, we launched with about 2,000 heroes. Today, we have over 200,000 heroes that have been summoned in by the community. The heroes needed something to do. So the next was launching our DeFi Kingdoms questing platform. 4 types of quests. You could fish and forage. These quests are kind of what they sound like in the real world. You go fishing, you try to get some fish. In DeFi Kingdoms, that fish is an actual ERC20 token, where we can choose to do many things with these tokens and resources, and so can anybody out there that is looking to come and build on top of DeFi Kingdoms. We also have 2 other quests, mining and gardening. This is where we took NFTs and crossed over into DeFi, to where if you were somebody providing liquidity on the DEX or in the garden, you could mine your rewards not yet available earlier than otherwise scheduled. You could garden to increase your overall APY. So it was the first effort to really start innovating, not only gamifying NFTs and play to earn, but combining them together. Let's see if it moves. Before it does, there's something at the bottom called meditation circle. So as you're playing with the hero NFTs, they get experience, your experience bar fills up. Now you have this NFT that has been useful so far and you've used it. You can go to the meditation circle and level it up, where it will actually get higher attributes as a result. So now you go down this path, you think about traditional RPG games that you gain experience, your player gets stronger, it's more fun, but now it actually carries value as well. You may have seen the docs on here. This was our first effort to gamify a third-party protocol, Synapse bridging. If you've experienced hopping in different protocols and you have to go to one, move assets to another, you change your URL, you hop over here, connect your wallet, go back, it's very clunky. What we've tried to do is in our metaverse of DeFi Kingdoms, make it so that any third-party protocol within DeFi, bridging, or other could be brought into the metaverse. We gamify the front end for you, it accesses the back end, and we create a partnership from there. You saw it pass over, going from the docs on Harmony to the Avalanche subnet, what we called Crystal Veil. That was our first expansion with our token that I mentioned, Crystal. We also had our new heroes there as well. Very successful launch, very exciting to start this multi-chain gaming experience. Where are we now? We have a few items we're going to talk about today listed on this Q2 portion. We've expanded our quests and training quests. We've come out with a stone carver, which takes a lot of the in-game tokens and converts them into resources that enhance our whole summoning offering. But DFK Duel and pets are our main topic today. We're going to go right into pets. I will wait to make sure it plays. We're going to go right into pets, where you're going to see the overall map of DeFi Kingdoms and Serendale on Harmony. And we're going to go into the marketplace and hop right into the NPC that is there to incubate the eggs that many have been catching into pets. To recap for those that, again, are not familiar, the quests that we talked about, one of the most rare items that you can get from the quest are these eggs, these pet eggs. And we have 4 types that come from there. They have all different colors. I won't go into too much detail now, but we have hatched 2 of the 4 types. You're going to see in a moment a lot of the pets come out. Very beautiful art, but today we're going to talk about what they're used for. So if you think about a game, you can play your hero and get stronger by getting experience leveling up, but you can also find equipment. You can also find things within multiple games that will have a companion of sorts that buffs your overall hero. That's really what pets are meant to do. They're supposed to make our hero NFTs even stronger. As I'm questing and I get an egg and I hatch it and I get a pet, it may be a common pet, maybe extremely rare. It might have a number of different things that it could buff my hero with. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do, I want to talk about also the benefits from like a business development perspective. All the other games out there, I think one of the weaknesses in blockchain in general and crypto is I feel like we're all just kind of developing on our own independently. We're on different blockchains. We have similar but different ideas. There's some people that maybe copy and paste and change something small. But what we'd really like to do is continue to partner with other games, with other protocols, like we did with Synapse, like we're working on doing with Banky from a DeFi perspective, but also do that with games. So if you have a game out there that has a pet, and you come to DeFi Kingdoms and the wallet recognizes that supported pet, maybe a new quest unlocks where you can go and get a chance to earn this promotional pet of a partner. It could work the other way as well, where many of our pets could appear in other games that support similar pet-like characters. I'm going to skip ahead on this video and get into some of the alpha that we're dropping as it relates to pets. So we hatched pets, but you can't yet use them. That's coming next. Now you have a hero NFT. That hero can go and quest. In the future, it'll be able to fight and do many other things within the game. But to buff that hero, a pet is going to be attached to or equipped to that hero. Now the pet might have a benefit related to questing, to combat and battle itself, or to crafting. The rarity of that pet is going to depend on how much of a benefit you could get. One big thing though is experience. Anybody that plays games that require you to farm or to sit there and gain experience, especially at the higher levels, experience is very important. with all of our pets and they're equipped to the hero, it's going to increase the amount of experience that they gain. Each pet is going to have up to 10, well, I guess up to 3 of potentially 10 bonuses per rarity. And that's going to affect things like